Welcome to the Out There channel, live stream 284 with Roberts. We'll be with you just after we check the audio and intro. Whoa, we got 11 people and 4 likes already. Hey, we're getting some feedback there on your mic, Robert.
Yeah, I know.
Why is it doing that? Should be going to your headset. Ooh, what's that scratchy noise? Didn't like that. Was that you or me?
That's me.
I've had 3 lies and there's been no problems, so if it goes wrong today, we can only blame you.
Sure.
Yeah, you might want to bend your camera a wee bit forward, just a tad. There we go. There we can see you. I haven't even caught up on the side chat. It's already been busy. Hell, we got J1980 with us. It is a crazy world. People that we don't see very often are coming back. So far so good, I think. How's the audio sounding out there, guys? Come on. CPU's peaking a wee bit. All good, Ken reckons. Great stuff. Hello. Good to be back. Although my tongue was very sore yesterday. I've bitten it probably 10 times in a row and had a chunk of tongue missing. I think it's healed but overnight with Bonjela and stuff. Thank God. It was so painful to eat. I might have to get a mouth. Yeah, I might have to get a mouth guard or something probably, but how can you sleep with those in your mouth? I don't know.
Takes time.
Yeah. My teeth are very sharp. Yeah. It's amazing how sharp they get. Razor
sharp. Stop filing them.
Well, they said I grind them at night probably, and that's probably why I bite my tongue. Okay, welcome. You think the enamel would wear down if you grind them though?
I imagine it does.
Well, here we are, talking about teeth. I wonder if aliens have teeth. Low stream. That would be scary. Seen an alien grind with vicious cat teeth. 284.
Chewbacca.
So we're doing more UFOs and planes, from what I saw from those lists.
Wow.
Yeah. With Robert. That'll do. So what do we got? Audio all good, cool, sound good. Doing good, thanks a lot. So we got Susan, Ken, J1980, Charles. Who else we got out there? It's been busy on the side chat. Alright, so yeah, what are we doing, Robert? So over to you now.
First one up is Lakenheath, 1956. It's the 40th anniversary of Rendlesham this year, isn't it? Happened over the Christmas period. And everyone's talking about it again.
I'm not
well, 1980. Well, it's 1980, wasn't it? It happened, so it's 2020 now. So a few months' time, it'll be the anniversary.
I barely remember my own birth date. I can't remember other people's.
Well, that's probably a good thing. Especially in your case.
My head is full of other stuff. Dates was not meant to be in there. Well, that's what computers were meant to remind you. So
It's
yeah,
coming
you got
back
to look.
into the public eye again now. Let me finish, Paul. It's coming back into the public eye again now, Rendlesham. So I thought it was good to look at some of the other cases that happened there, and there's plenty of them too.
Right.
But we'll start with Lakenheath. And do you want me to leave you a link?
Yep. So that's down this end of UK. I had time to put it up.
It's Suffolk, England.
Yeah. CPU has been a little cow. Come on, give me some more cores. So we're going down to there, which is called Lakenheath. Strange name. Is there a lake there or what? I suppose it could be.
Modern likelies, but the incident happened over the Bentwaters and Woodbridge Air Force bases, the joint bases.
Yeah, Air Force.
And you had
here.
Rendlesham Borders was in between the two bases.
Yeah, there's two bases here. Somewhere. But anyway. Yeah. Man, it's so cold here today. It's gradually warming up. I've got the oil heater on. Can't feel my hand. So, where's this going?
There we go. This is just a quick introduction to the case before we go into more detail, okay?
Right. Okay. I would have thought people know all about the Bentwaters by now.
I don't think they'll be familiar with this case, Paul.
Well, let's see. We do cover bits and pieces on other lives, you know. Oh, I forgot to put the header on. It doesn't matter. Go from there.
Over Bentwaters, AFB, UK. Because of the major importance of the 1980 UFO landings in Rendlesham Forest near the RAF/USA joint bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge, another important, well-documented UFO sighting at Bentwaters is often overlooked. Observations of unidentified objects by USAF and RAF personnel, extending over 5 hours, and involving ground radar, airborne radar, ground visual, and airborne visual sightings of high-speed unconventionally maneuvering objects in the vicinity of 2 RAF stations at night make this case a true unexplained. It is case 2 in the Condon report, and is there conceded to be unexplained. On the night of August 13th to 14th, 1956, radar operators at 2 military bases in the east of England repeatedly tracked single and multiple objects which displayed high speed, as well as rapid changes of speed and direction. 2 jet interceptors were sent up, and were able to see and track them in a brief series of maneuvers. According to official U.S. Air Force reports, the sightings could not be explained by radar malfunction or by unusual weather.
I'm sure
it began at 9:30 p.m. when Airman Second Class John Vicaire, of the U.S. Air Force at RAF Bentwaters, tracked one UFO on his ground-controlled approach radar, type /MPN-11A, as it flew 40 to 50 miles, 65 to 80 kilometers, in 30 seconds, i.e. 4,800 to 6,000 miles per hour, 7,500 to 9,500 kilometers/HR. A few minutes later Vicaire reported to T/Sergeant L. Wenry that a group of 12 to 15 unidentified targets was tracked from 8 miles, 13 kilometers, southwest of Bentwaters to 40 miles, 65 kilometers, northeast, at which time they appeared to converge into one very large object, according to the size of the blip on the radar scope, which seemed to be several times larger than a B-36 aircraft, the largest operational bomber in history, with a wingspan of 230 feet, or 70 m. The single large blip stopped twice for several minutes while being tracked, before flying off the scope.
That is pretty big.
At 10 p.m., a single unidentified target was tracked from Bentwaters as it covered 55 miles, 90 kilometers, in just 16 seconds. This works out to over 12,000 miles per hour, 19,000 kilometers/HR. Then, at 10:55 p.m., the Bentwaters GCA radar picked up an unidentified target on the same east to west course
you got to remember
as the
the
previous
space
one,
station goes at
an
that
apparent
speed
of 2,000 to 4,000 miles per hour, 3,200 to 6,400 km/h. Someone in the Bentwaters control tower reported seeing a bright light passing over the field from east to west at about 4,000 feet, 1,200 m. At about the same time, the pilot of a C-47 twin-engine military transport plane over Bentwaters said, "A bright light streaked under my aircraft traveling east to west at terrific speed." All three reports coincided. Soon after, radars at Bentwaters and RAF Lakenheath reported a stationary object 20 to 25 miles, 32 to 40 kilometers, southwest of the latter base. It suddenly began moving north at 400 to 600 miles per hour, 650
This
to
wasn't a triangle, was it?
1,000 km/h, but there was
No.
no build-up to this speed. It was constant from the second it started to move until it stopped. It made several abrupt changes of direction without appearing to slow for
Yeah,
its
so you
turns.
stop it there.
Around 11:30 p.m., the
Yeah, so you've got another factor that comes up a lot with UFO reports: instant acceleration. No, I'm not really sure how that you can do that, and a change of course, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be possible in conventional terms, and this was 1956 as well.
And
So it caused a stir on both sides of the Atlantic. This case, Paul, because the United States Air Force were involved as well as the Royal Air Force.
I'd just like to say as
unfortunately-
well. Well,
What?
I just wanted to add to that this sounds very similar to some of the pilot reports that came out on the show yesterday from the new unidentified series from
Yes,
To the
which
Stars.
I haven't seen as yet. I haven't seen
You
that
haven't
yet.
seen it, right? It's quite interesting. They've got some combat pilot sightings,
Yeah, I
as
know.
well as ground sightings, and someone said they could hear a jet, but they couldn't see it in the sky until they put on the special thermal night vision goggles they had, and they could see this jet very high altitude, which they couldn't normally see. Obviously, it's got some sort of cloak, and they couldn't see
Hold on.
flame.
Stop for a second. They seen the jet.
No, they heard the jet. They could hear it, but they couldn't see it. So they put on the goggles, and they could see way up in the distance. And the goggles was probably optical zoom as well. This jet flying along, which they couldn't see with their normal eyes. Despite
okay, so what's
obviously it would have given
that?
Well,
It's a jet.
what was unusual at the same time, he saw three. I think it said it was three white objects approach it and tag along and overtake him. And then zip around and doing right angle turns and left angle turns and all that sort of stuff. That's what you call a real UFO sighting in my book. But yeah, it's a really good thing. I don't want to spoil it too much. Go and watch it if you ain't seen episode 1. You can actually find some leaks online if you've not in a country where it takes 6 months to get to you. You can pre-watch it out there on free streams if you know where to look. But I just thought this entry sounded very similar to some of the stuff that was being said on that episode 1. So far it's very good, but still it's the stories, really good, credible stories, again from military people. But we still need to see some video, don't we? And we need to see some evidence. But
we know there's more out there. We know for a fact there's more out there. It's just getting them declassified, released.
Yeah, and they also talked about a B29 bomber, and they took photographs of an actual onboard radar system, and it was classified top secret, so they never got them back. And so they've put in a FOIA request to get those photographs, whether they get it or not, after 60 years. It'll be interesting to see. So it sounds very similar to the cases you're doing today.
Another thing. I don't know if you've seen the interview with Chris Mellon in midweek. He was with Alejandro Rojas.
No, it hasn't come out to us, poor people.
What he was. Well, hold on. Let me talk. What he's saying is that you know this new bill that's gone through Senate. the intelligence bill. What he's saying, these cases that are and identified, they should be at least looked into further.
Oh, yeah.
As long as the bill is passed. But it's got to go through the Senate, and then it's got to go through the House, and then, because the president's going to look at it, and he might put up some resistance to it. I don't know. So that's going to be, basically, it's going to be another 180 days, and then we don't have to act on it for another 180 days. So we're looking at middle of next year, maybe, before we actually hear any more about that.
Right around the electrons.
US electron. Yeah, of course. Well, which are in November.
Yeah, so it's going to be chaos in that time period, I say.
Yeah, it is.
The way America's going, there might be a civil war yet. A new one.
Don't say that. Don't say that. If there's going to be any disclosure, that's going to push it right back, isn't it?
Yep, that's what I mean. We just don't know what's going to happen in the future. But anyway,
no, we don't. It's very uncertain times.
Crazy times. People trying to divide people. That's all I see. I
see it all the time, every day on Facebook.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of American people.
I know.
You know, and it's shameful to actually see the way some of them are behaving, and I'm talking intelligent people here as well. And that's the deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, intelligent people, when it comes to anything else, but it's almost like some people are trying to put words in your mouth. You know, you can't say anything without them trying to twist it and turn you into a monster. Anyway,
that's exactly what's going on.
Back to the UFO thing. Yeah.
Exactly what's going on. It's terrible out there. Susan probably knows that too. But anyway, we better carry on.
11:30 p.m., the RAF launched a de Havilland Venom jet interceptor from RAF Water Beach. According to the U.S. Air Force UFO report, pilot advised he had a bright white light in sight and would investigate. At 13 miles, 20 kilometers, west he reported loss of target and white light. Lakenheath, radar, vectored him to a target 10 miles, 16 kilometers, east of Lakenheath, and pilot advised that target was on his radar and was locking on. Pilot then reported he had lost target on his radar. Lakenheath GCA reports that as the Venom passed the target on radar, the target began a tail chase of the friendly fighter. Radar requested pilot acknowledge this chase. Pilot acknowledged and stated he would try to circle and get behind the target. Pilot advised he was unable to shake the target off his tail and requested assistance. One additional Venom was scrambled from RAF station. Original pilot stated, "Clearest target I have ever seen on radar." The following conversation between the two Venom fighter pilots was heard by the Lakenheath watch supervisor. "Did you see anything?" Pilot number 2. "I saw something, but I'll be damned if I know what it was." Pilot number 1. "What happened?"
Oh.
Pilot number 2.
That's my jawbone clicking.
"He or it got behind me, and I did everything I could to get behind him, and I couldn't. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen." Pilot number 1. The 1969 report by the Air Force-funded study at the University of Colorado under Dr. Edward U. Condon concluded, "In summary, this is the most puzzling and unusual case in the radar visual files. The apparent rational, intelligent behavior of the UFO suggests a mechanical device of unknown origin as the most probable explanation of this sighting. However, in view of the inevitable fallibility of witnesses, more conventional explanations of this report cannot be entirely ruled out." USAF Air Intelligence Information Report filed by Captain Edward L. Holt, August 31, 1956. RAF Controller Account. This is the little-known but definitive account by FHC Wimbledon, RAF Fighter Controller on duty at RAF Needyshed, Norfolk. "I was Chief Controller on duty at the main RAF radar station in East Anglia on the night in question. My duties were to monitor the radar picture and to scramble the battle flight, who were on duty 24 hours a day, to intercept any intruder of British airspace not positively identified in my sector of responsibility. I remember Lakenheath USAF base telephoning to say there was something buzzing their airfield circuit. I scrambled a Venom night fighter from the battle flight through sector, and my controller in the interception cabin took over control of it. The interception control team would consist of one fighter controller, an officer, a corporal, a tracker, and a height reader. That is, for highly trained personnel in addition to myself could now clearly see the object on our radar scopes. After being vectored onto the trail of the object by my interception controller, the pilot called out, "Contact," then a short time later, "Judy," which meant the navigator had the target fairly and squarely on his own radar screen, and needed no further help from the ground. He continued to close on the target, but after a few seconds, and in the space of 1 or 2 sweeps of our scopes, the object appeared behind our fighter. Our pilot called out, "Lost contact, more help," and he was told the target was now behind him, and he was given fresh instructions. I then scrambled a second Venom, which was vectored toward the area, but before—
Yeah, I was typing, mate.
Okay.
Yeah, and what are you going to
Your
say?
mouse is, I think your mouse or your keyboard is sticking there. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
No, I miss typing it on purpose, yeah, Robert, because of the Google bot. You know what it's like.
Yeah, but that's a very uncompromising position for a pilot to be in when all of a sudden the object finds itself right behind him. He's totally vulnerable then. He's screwed, basically. That thing decides to shoot. And I don't know whether these things carry weaponry or not, but he's not going to know that either, is he?
Sounds
so
to
that's
me
why they scrambled
I don't think they would need weapons.
No, maybe not. Maybe not.
They could outrun their weapons, or they could disable the weapons. So they're probably more passive rather than aggressive, I'd say. As we'd have more.
Yeah, it's not just that, Paul. I mean, if you look now at this new unidentified and the witnesses coming forward saying very similar things to what's happening here. Now, in 2020, it's quite easy to say, yeah, well, they're probably, high-performance drones, blah, 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 its own technology. It's a bit more difficult to say that back in 1956, isn't it? And even earlier, the same kind of things were happening.
Yeah, especially at 19,000 kilometers per hour.
But, that's a ridiculous speed.
Yeah, same with the space station orbits, right? 17,000 miles per hour. Well, it's actually going slightly faster, but
I mean, quite clearly, it wasn't the space station, or was it?
No, but the first episode,
1956.
Yeah, but the first episode has said that they're not too sure why they're circling our military jets, and they said it's like they're studying us, and they're trying to see how we're thinking and whether our weapons are super dangerous, probably nuclear might be the part there.
I mean, every time there's a theatre of war, they turn up, and even more so since we developed nuclear weapons, or began to start developing during the Second World War with the Foo Fighters and such, But if you go back to the American Civil War, what was that, 1861 to 1865, I believe, off the top of my head. There was multiple UFO sightings then, Theatres of conflict they seem to be drawn to.
Yeah.
Probably turn up for a bit of entertainment,
That's
Makes
right.
you think, what the hell are these guys? Look at them, they're killing each other.
Yeah. But why would they bother showing themselves up if they can cloak and all that? So that's another mystery. Why can't they just observe us but keep it cloaked, Well,
I don't think... maybe they are deliberately showing themselves, Paul, or maybe they just don't care.
Yep.
That's the only thing. That's the only conclusion I can come to. I mean, why, if you've got something that's that technologically superior, surely you can turn the lights off.
Yeah.
But no, quite often they're lit up like a Christmas tree.
And they have strange lights as well, colour lights. I think they said on the episode yesterday. So, yeah, shame you haven't listened to it. But anyway, on with the show again.
Yeah.
CPU's behaving
Toward
itself.
the area, but before it arrived on the scene, the target had disappeared from our scopes, and although we continued to keep a careful watch, was not seen by us. The fact remains that at least 9 RAF ground personnel and 2 RAF aircrew were conscious of an object sufficiently solid to give returns on radar. Naturally, all this was reported, and a senior officer from the Air Ministry came down and interrogated us. The Condon Report Case. Lakenheath, England, 13 to 14 August 1956.
Do we need this?
The Condon Report.
It's up to you.
22
You gave it to us.
I can't see what's underneath. Yeah, carry on.
Carry on.
2230 to 0330 LST. Weather, generally clear until 0300 LST on the 14th. For details see section 4. The probability that anomalous propagation of radar signals may have been involved in this case seems to be small. 1 or 2 details are suggestive of AP, particularly the reported disappearance of the first track as the UFO appeared to overfly the Bentwaters GCA radar. Against this must be weighed the Lakenheath controller's statement that there was little or no traffic or targets on scope, which is not at all suggestive of AP conditions, and the behavior of the target near Lakenheath apparently continuous and easily tracked. The tailing of the RAF fighter, taken alone, seems to indicate a possible ghost image, but this does not jibe with the report that the UFO stopped following the fighter, as the latter was returning to its base, and went off in a different direction. The radar operators were apparently careful to calculate the speed of the UFO from distances and elapsed times, and the speeds were reported as consistent from run to run, between stationary episodes. This behavior would be somewhat consistent with reflections from moving atmospheric layers, but not in so many different directions. Visual mirage at Bentwaters seems to be out of the question, because of the combined ground and airborne observations. The C-47 pilot apparently saw the UFO below him. The visual objects do not seem to have been meteors. Statements by the observers that meteors were numerous imply that they were able to differentiate the UFO from the meteors. In summary, this is the most puzzling and unusual case in the radar visual files. The apparently rational, intelligent behavior of the UFO suggests a mechanical device of unknown origin as the most probable explanation of this sighting. However, in view of the inevitable fallibility of witnesses, more conventional explanations of this report cannot be entirely ruled out.
That's it, Paul.
Sources.
Yep, that's finished.
Yeah. Now, those visual, what did he call them? Visual, not hallucinations, but mirages, visual mirages. That was David Clarke, you know, the UK debunker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, apparently he's been showing up sometime. I don't know if he's in the first episode of Unidentified as well.
Yeah, he was on yesterday's, yeah.
Yeah, and well, from what I've been told, he's sounding fairly pathetic. Well, as he usually does anyway, to be honest. But that's what he put this case down to, a visual mirage. But that doesn't explain how the radar on the ground picked it up. And the air-to-air radar on
and did not eyewitness accounts.
Picked it up.
Eyewitness accounts. You'd have to say that all the pilots need retraining because they can't tell the difference between a mirage and a real craft. Exactly. So, yeah. But he did yesterday say that there's a lot of cases that can be explained. Natural, whatever it was. I'd probably have to re-listen to it all again. But yeah, it was good. I mean, it wasn't a bad episode, actually.
Yeah, of course, a lot of them can. It's just some of them can't. And unfortunately, they've kind of been swept underneath the carpet because it's inconvenient.
Yep. So we got another link to go.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it for you now. This goes into it in far more detail, okay? And not just that. This shows the shortcomings of Project Blue Book and the Condon Committee, which was sponsored by the University of Colorado, which was designed basically to bring Blue Book down and say there was nothing to see here. But we're going to go into that in more detail because they got caught cold in their deception, and it's actually quite funny.
Okay.
So anyway, I've left you the link there, Paul.
Yeah, get up on the screen.
So pay attention to what McDonald here. I'm sure you're familiar with James McDonald by now. I hope you are. He's the guy that the astrophysicist that atmospheric physicist he was, who studied UFOs. Took it very seriously.
There's a heap on this page.
There's an awful lot here, so we're going to have to run through this quite quickly. But it's a good case, so it's worth looking at in as much detail as we can. But take note what he's saying now about Blue Book and the Condon Committee.
Right.
McDonald, brief summary. Observations of unidentified objects by USAF and RAF personnel, extending over 5 hours, and involving ground radar, ground visual and airborne visual sightings of high-speed unconventionally maneuvering objects in the vicinity of 2 RAF stations at night. It is Case 2 in the Condon Report, and is there conceded to be unexplained. 1. Introduction. This case will illustrate, in significant ways, the following points. A. It illustrates the fact that many scientifically intriguing UFO reports have lain in USAF/Blue Book files for years, without knowledge thereof by the scientific community.
I bet there's a few more we don't know about.
It represents a large subset of UFO cases in which all of the observations stemmed from military sources and which, had there been serious and competent scientific interest operating in Project Blue Book, could have been very thoroughly investigated while the information was fresh. It also illustrates the point that the actual levels of investigation were entirely inadequate in even as unexplainable and involved cases as this one. C. It illustrates the uncomfortably incomplete and internally inconsistent features that one encounters in almost every report of its kind in the USAF/Blue Book files at Wright-Patterson AFB, features attesting to the dearth of scientific competence in the Air Force UFO investigations over the past 20 years. D. It illustrates, when the original files are carefully studied and compared with the discussion thereof in the Condon Report, shortcomings in presentation and critique given many cases in the Condon Report. E. Finally, I believe it illustrates an example of those cases conceded to be unexplainable by the Condon Report that argue need for much more extensive and more thorough scientific investigation of the UFO problem, a need negated in the Condon Report and in the Academy endorsement thereof. My discussion of this case will be based upon the 30-page Blue Book case file, plus certain other information presented on it in the Condon Report. This Lakenheath case was not known outside of USAF circles prior to publication of the Condon Report. None of the names of military personnel involved are given in the Condon Report. Witness names, dates, and locales are deleted from all of the main group of cases in that report, seriously impeding independent scientific check of case materials. I secured copies of the case file from Blue Book, but all names of military personnel involved in the incident were cut out of the Xerox copies prior to releasing the material to me. Hence I have been unable to interview personally the key witnesses. However, there is no indication that anyone on the Colorado project did any personal interviews, either, so it would appear I have had access to the same basic data used in the Condon Report's treatment of this extremely interesting case.
There you go.
Now, can you see what they're doing? They're making it impossible for this case to be reopened as a cold case because there's no witnesses. The names have been taken out. There's no place name. We know the case is real, but where did it happen? Who are the personnel involved?
Yeah. But you could say that it's saying
mean-
about MUFON buying databases off other people, and they're getting all the full details of address and people's names. And yet you got Erica Luke saying that all that should be taken out before the database is sold, so it keeps the information private. So this is really like saying...
That depends. That depends if they want to stay anonymous or not, Paul.
Yeah. That's true. It should be in the database.
Because MUFON basically sold their entire database over to TTSA without removing any names and locations, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they're removing it on this report here we're talking about on the screen.
Yeah.
So
basically makes it impossible to follow up on the case.
Yeah, but if MUFON did the same, you'd be saying the same about them, that they're trying to cover up by removing people's names. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an argument for both, yes.
So, yeah, I don't know how you get around that. It makes it complicated.
But Blue Book and the Condon report, like, it definitely had an ulterior motive by removing those names and other details.
Yes.
And another thing, they didn't even interview the witnesses. There may have been some phone interviews. They just knew they weren't going to be able to explain it, so they didn't go into it too deeply.
Yeah, of course. Remember, with time, people die too, and so you can't re-interview them again or whatever. Or go and do a proper investigation, reopen it. As we know, a lot of these ones, if they were investigated, we certainly didn't hear about it publicly. You know,
not at the time. No, not at the time. But the Blue Book was meant to be a public report, wasn't it? It was taxpayers' money. It wasn't black money. And so was the Condon report, or the Condon Committee. Yeah.
Yes. But still, if it's security classed, you can't release it publicly, can you?
Well,
or put fear into the public.
Paul, all the best cases circumnavigated Blue Book anyway. They were going somewhere else.
Well,
and there's no question about that. I mean, Hynek knew full well because he actually spoke to people. And he said, well, why didn't we get this case? And he said, oh, I don't know. Some guys from the military came here and, you know, they interviewed me and they said, okay, that was it. Don't speak about it.
Well, from what
Blue Book didn't have it, so Hynek knew then that those cases were going somewhere else.
From what I'm seeing from the episode last night is the only people that were told to shut up were military people, and they shut up. But you're talking about normal everyday people, you know, that saw it fly past their farm or whatever. It's hard for them to shut up because they want to know the truth, what they saw, right? They want to know if it's a military experiment or aliens. So they're going to tell the newspapers, or they're going to tell other reporters.
You got it, yeah. So you can't contain those cases too well.
And they wouldn't take to threats kindly. You know, could you imagine someone from Kentucky being told to shut up? You know, what do you call them? Hillbillies or rednecks, or what's the terminology they use?
Careful what you say now. Careful what you say.
I don't know what you call them at that location, but those guys don't take shit, do they? You've seen them on TV. You ever seen that episode where the Top Gear drive through? Is it South America?
Yes, I did.
South America, you know, Florida and all that. That was hilarious. But you can see those guys you don't want to mess around with. They ain't got a sense of humor, some of them. So
shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah, that's right. If people have not seen the episode, you can find it online. I can't remember what it was called now, but it was a special episode. It was really funny.
Anyways, you've got a long way to go on this page, so better get on with it while I get a refill here.
A refill, not an empty then.
Case For no justified reason, the Condon report not only deletes witness names, but also names of localities of the UFO incidents in its main sample of 59 cases. In this Lakenheath case, deletion of locality names creates much confusion for the reader, since 3 distinct RAF stations figure in the incident, and since the discharged non-commissioned officer from whom they received first word of this UFO episode confused the names of 2 of those stations in his own account that appears in the Condon report. That, plus other repertorial deficiencies in the presentation of the Lakenheath case in the Condon report, will almost certainly have concealed its real significance from most readers of the report. Unfortunately, the basic Blue Book file is itself about as confusing as most Blue Book files on UFO cases. I shall attempt to mitigate as many of those difficulties as I can in the following, by putting the account into better overall order than one finds in the Condon report treatment. 2. General circumstances. The entire episode extended from about 2130Z, August 13th, to 0330Z, August 14th, 1956. Thus this is a nighttime case. The events occurred in east-central England, chiefly in Suffolk. The initial reports centered around Bentwaters RAF station, located about 6 miles east of Ipswich, near the coast, while much of the subsequent action centers around Lakenheath RAF station, located some 20 miles northeast of Cambridge. Sculthorpe RAF station also figures in the account, but only to a minor extent. It is near Fakenham, in the vicinity of the Washington GCA, ground-controlled approach. Radars at 2 of those 3 stations were involved in the ground radar sightings, as was an RTCC, Radar Traffic Control Center, radar unit at Lakenheath. The USAF non-com who wrote to the Colorado Project about this incident was a watch supervisor on duty at the Lakenheath RTCC unit that night. His detailed account is reproduced in the Condon report, pages 248 to 251. The report comments on the remarkable accuracy of the account of the witness as given in his reproduced letter, which was apparently written from memory 12 years after the incident. I would concur, but would note that, had the Colorado Project only investigated more such striking cases of past years, it would have found many other witnesses in UFO cases whose vivid recollections often match surprising well-checkable contemporary accounts. My experience thereon has been that, in multiple witness cases where one can evaluate consistency of recollections, the more unusual and inexplicable the original UFO episode, the more it impressed upon the several witnesses' memories a meaningful and still useful pattern of relevant recollections. Doubtless, another important factor operates. The UFO incidents that are the most striking and most puzzling probably have been discussed by the key witnesses enough times that their recollections have been thereby reinforced in a useful way. The only map given in the Condon report is based on a sketch map made by the non-com who alerted them to the case. It is misleading, for Sculthorpe is shown 50 miles east of Lakenheath, whereas it actually lies 30 miles north-northeast. The map does not show Bentwaters at all. It is actually some 40 miles east-southeast of Lakenheath. Even as basic items as those locations do not appear to have been ascertained by those who prepared the discussion of this case in the Condon report, which is most unfortunate, yet not atypical.
Do you want to
that
stop
this
it there,
incident
Paul?
was subsequently discussed by many
Okay. Yeah, so NICAP and Donald Kehoe, they kind of got into bed with the Condon Committee for a while. And, well, in the sense that they were trying to work together.
That's an unfortunate name.
NICAP, yeah, well, at least NICAP thought they were trying to work together. But when NICAP and Kehoe passed on, Paul, I don't think it's that funny.
I liked it.
Jesus, man.
You should listen.
Yeah, they were trying to work
it.
together. So
yeah, condom
when Kehoe
and together.
yeah,
Anyway.
okay. Well done, Paul. Very funny. So anyway, when Kehoe realised that they didn't have much interest in their cases, because those cases, as far as the Condon Committee were concerned, well, it's a little bit too difficult to explain, so they rejected the cases. So that ended. the working relationship between NICAP and the Condon Committee. So, yeah, Kehoe, jump out of bed.
Mm.
But it was a shame.
Where did they get the name Condon from? That was from the guy's name, wasn't it?
Edward Condon, the scientist. It's not
You think
spelled the same, Paul.
no, you think they might have
Mm.
come up with a better name, really. But anyway.
No, Edward Condon was a quite well-renowned nuclear physicist, but he had absolutely no interest in UFOs whatsoever. But they thought if they put him at the head of the project, it would make it look legitimate, you see?
Yeah.
But it was anything but.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hello, Glenn.
What have you got? Oh, you got your mate on.
Yeah.
Gwen from UK, Wales, I should say. Okay, carry on, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Many Lakenheath personnel was indicated to me by a chance event. In the course of my investigations of another radar UFO case from the Condon report, that of September 11, 67 at Kinchelo AFB, I found that the radar operator involved therein had previously been stationed with the USAF detachment at Lakenheath and knew of the events at second hand, because they were still being discussed there by radar personnel when he arrived many months later. 3. Initial events at Bentwaters, 2130Z to 2200Z. One of the many unsatisfactory aspects of the Condon report is its frequent failure to put before the reader a complete account of the UFO cases it purports to analyze scientifically. In the present instance, the report omits all details of 3 quite significant radar sightings made by Bentwaters GCA personnel prior to their alerting the Lakenheath GCA and RTCC groups at 2255 LST. This omission is certainly not because of correspondingly slight mention in the original Blue Book case file. Rather, the Bentwaters sightings actually receive more Blue Book attention than the subsequent Lakenheath events. Hence, I do not see how such omissions in the Condon report can be justified. A. First radar sighting, 2130Z. Bentwaters GCA operator, A/2C___________. I shall use a blank to indicate the names razor-bladed out of my copies of the case file prior to release of the file items to me, reported picking up a target 25 to 30 miles ESE, which moved at very high speed on constant 295 degrees. Heading across his scope until he lost it 15 to 20 miles to the NW of Bentwaters. In the Blue Book file, A/2C_______ is reported as describing it as a strong radar echo, comparable to that of a typical aircraft, until it weakened near the end of its path across his scope. He is quoted as estimating a speed of the order of 4,000 miles per hour, but 2 other cited quantities suggest even higher speeds. A transit time of 30 seconds is given, and if one combines that with the reported range of distance traversed, 40 to 50 miles, a speed of about 5,000 to 6,000 miles per hour results.
It was funny.
Finally, A/2C______ stated that it covered about 5 to 6 miles per sweep of the /MPNLLA GCA radar he was using.
Charlie's woofing.
The sweep period for that set is given as 2 seconds, 30 RPM, so this yields an even higher speed estimate of about 9,000 miles per hour. Internal discrepancies of this sort are quite typical of Blue Book case files, I regret to say. My study of many such files during the past 3 years leaves me no conclusion, but that Blue Book work has never represented high-caliber scientific work, but rather has operated as a perfunctory bookkeeping and filing operation during most of its life. Of the 3 speed figures just mentioned, the latter derives from the type of observation most likely to be reasonably accurate, in my opinion. The displacement of a series of successive radar blips on a surveillance radar, such as the MPN-11A, can be estimated to perhaps a mile or so with little difficulty, when the operator has as large a number of successive blips to work with as is here involved. Nevertheless, it is necessary to regard the speed as quite uncertain here, though presumably in the range of several thousand miles per hour, and hence not associable with any conventional aircraft, nor with still higher speed meteors either. B. Second radar sighting, 2130-2155Z. A few minutes after the preceding event, T/SGT_______ picked up on the same MPN-11 AA group of 12 to 15 objects about 8 miles SW of Bentwaters. In the report to Blue Book, he pointed out that these objects appeared as normal targets on the GCA scope, and that normal checks made to determine possible malfunctions of the GCA radar failed to indicate anything was technically wrong. The dozen or so objects were moving together towards the NE at varying speeds, ranging between 80 and 125 miles per hour, and the 12 to 15 unidentified objects were preceded by 3 objects, which were in a triangular formation with an estimated 1,000 feet separating each object in this formation. The dozen objects to the rear were scattered behind the lead formation of 3 at irregular intervals, with the whole group simultaneously covering a 6 to 7 mile area.
Why would they be travelling so slow for alien craft?
Consistent radar returns came from this group during their 25-minute movement from the point at which they were first picked up, 8 miles SW, to a point about 40 miles NE of Bentwaters, their echoes decreasing in intensity as they moved off to the NE. When the group reached a point some 40 miles NE, they all appeared to converge to form a single radar echo, whose intensity is described as several times larger than AB-36 return under comparable conditions. Then motion ceased, while this single strong echo remained stationary for 10 to 15 minutes. Then it resumed motion to the NE for 5 to 6 miles, stopped again for 3 to 5 minutes, and finally moved northward and off the scope.
Mothership?
C. Third radar sighting, 2200Z. 5 minutes after the foregoing formation moved off scope, T/SGT______ detected an unidentified target about 30 miles E of the Bentwaters GCA station and tracked it in rapid westward motion to a point about 25 miles W of the station, where the object suddenly disappeared off the radar screen by rapidly moving out of the GCS radiation pattern, according to his interpretation of the event. Here, again, we get discordant speed information. For T/SGT______ gave the speed only as being in excess of 4,000 miles per hour, whereas the time duration of the tracking, given as 16 SEC, implies a speed of 12,000 miles per hour, for the roughly 55 miles track length reported. Nothing in the Blue Book files indicates that this discrepancy was investigated further, or even noticed, so one can say only that the apparent speed lay far above that of conventional aircraft.
So why haven't they brought this case to attention on To the Stars? So it sounds like they got radar data there for this one.
According to the Stars, Paul, this whole thing only just recently started up. I'm not sure. I mean, but if you go back, it's kind of convenient, isn't it, to ignore the old cases? Because if you were to suddenly come out now and say, okay, UFOs are reality. Yeah. That you're leaving yourself wide open to a libel when you've been denying it for 70 years. So it's far more convenient to say this is something that's really just started happening. You see what I mean?
Unless the people died that sort of tried to cover it up, and then it doesn't really matter then. You can say, well, we're not sure what their reasons were, but they're dead now, so now we can bring the information to light. And people will forgive them, you see, because the guys are dead, you know.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think that's what's going to happen, though. As more people die,
the Air
more
Force is
open
still
up.
the Air Force. The Air Force is still the Air Force. The CIA is still the CIA. And they've been around a long time. Of course, there'll be no individuals that can be held personally accountable. But the Air Force is still there, and the CIA is still there, and so all the other alphabet agencies, you know, so the Navy and the Army, and etc., etc. So, I don't know. It could be a dodgy business saying, okay, they've been around since
I just want to bring attention.
And we're just telling you now.
Just want to bring attention that Susan's posted a link to the Intelligence Act in Congress progress link there that you can check on daily or whatever.
But it's
See
going to
how
be
it's going.
it's going to be, you can follow it, and it's a useful link to bookmark and look at now and again. But it's going to be a long time before we learn any great deal of information about that case.
And
but you can see, but by following that link, you can find how it's getting through the bill and Senate and the Senate and the House, and
we got Blind and Both Eyes has joined us. Welcome to the channel. I think we saw you last weekend. We'll just carry on, shall we?
Yeah, please. We've got a lot to go through.
D. Other observations at Bentwaters. A control tower sergeant, aware of the concurrent radar tracking, noted a light the size of a pinhead at arm's length at about 10 degrees elevation to the SSE. It remained there for about 1 hour, intermittently appearing and disappearing. Since Mars was in that part of the sky at that time, a reasonable interpretation is that the observer was looking at that planet. AT-33 of the 512th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, returning to Bentwaters from a routine flight at about 21:30 Z, was vectored to the NE to search for the group of objects being tracked in that sector. Their search, unaided by airborne radar, led to no airborne sighting of any aircraft or other objects in that area, and after about 45 minutes they terminated search, having seen only a bright star in the east and a coastal beacon as anything worth noting. The Blue Book case file contains 1956 USAF discussions of the case that make a big point of the inconclusiveness of the tower operator's sighting and the negative results of the T-33 search, but say nothing about the much more puzzling radar tracking incidents than to stress that they were of divergent directions, intimating that this somehow put them in the category of anomalous propagation, which scarcely follows. Indeed, none of the 3 cited radar sightings exhibits any features typical of AP echoes. The winds over the Bentwaters area are given in the file. They jump from the surface level, winds from 230 degrees, at 5 to 10 kts, to the 6,000 feet level, 260 degrees, 30 kts, and then hold at a steady 260 degrees, up to 50,000 feet, with speeds rising to a maximum of 90 kts near 30,000 feet, even if one sought to invoke the highly dubious Borden-Vickers hypothesis. Moving waves on an inversion surface, not even the slowest of the tracked echoes, 80 to 125 miles per hour, could be accounted for, nor is it even clear that the direction would be explainable. Furthermore, the strength of the individual echoes, stated as comparable to normal aircraft returns, the merging of the 15 or so into a single echo, the 2 intervals of stationary and final motion off scope at a direction about 45 degrees from the initial motion, are all wholly unexplainable in terms of AP in these 21:30-21:55 Z incidents. The extremely high-speed westward motion of single targets is even further from any known radar anomaly associated with disturbed propagation conditions. Blips that move across scopes from one sector to the opposite, in steady heading at steady apparent speed, correspond neither to AP nor to internal electronic disturbances. Nor could interference phenomena fit such observed echo behavior.
So it's 15 UFOs.
Thus, this 30-minute period,
went inside a mothership and took off.
2200Z, embraced 3 distinct events for which no satisfactory explanation exists. That these 3 events are omitted from the discussions in the Condon report is unfortunate, for they serve to underscore the scientific significance of subsequent events at both Bentwaters and Lakenheath stations. 4. Comments on reporting of events after 22:55Z, August 13, 56. The events summarized above were communicated to Blue Book by Captain Edward L. Holt of the 81st Fighter Bomber Wing stationed at Bentwaters, as Report No. IR-1-56, dated August 31, 1956. All events occurring subsequent to 2200Z, on the other hand, were communicated to Project Blue Book via an earlier, lengthy teletype transmission from the Lakenheath USAF unit, sent out in the standard format of the report form specified by Regulation AFR 200-2. 2 teletype transmissions, dated August 17, 56 and August 21, 56, identical in basic content, were sent from Lakenheath to Blue Book. The Condon report presents the content of that teletype report on pages 252 to 254, in full, except for deletion of all names and localities and omission of one important item to be noted later here. However, most readers will be entirely lost because what is presented actually constitutes a set of answers to questions that are not stated. The Condon report does not offer the reader the hint that the version of AFR 200-2 appearing in the report's appendix, pages 819 to 826, they're identified by its current designation, AFR 80-17, would provide the reader with the standardized questions needed to translate much of the otherwise extremely confusing array of answers on pages 252 to 254. For that reason, plus others, many readers will almost certainly be greatly, and entirely unnecessarily, confused on reading this important part of the Lakenheath report in the Condon report. That confusion, unfortunately, does not wholly disappear upon laboriously matching questions with answers, for it has long been one of the salient deficiencies of the USAF program of UFO report collection that the format of AFR 200-2, or its sequel AFR 80-17, is usually only barely adequate and, especially for complex episodes such as that involved here, often entirely incapable of affording the reporting office enough scope to set out clearly, and in proper chronological order all of the events that may be of potential scientific significance. Anyone who has studied many Blue Book reports in the AFR 200-2 format, dating back to 1953, will be uncomfortably aware of this gross difficulty. Failure to carry out even modest follow-up investigations, and incorporate findings thereof into Blue Book case files, leaves most intriguing Blue Book UFO cases full of unsatisfactorily answered questions.
Stop it after this, Paul.
But those deficiencies do not, in my opinion, prevent the careful reader from discerning that very large numbers of those UFO cases carry highly significant scientific implications of an intriguing problem going largely unexamined in past years.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can see now, MacDonald has torn Blue Book and the Condon Committee to pieces here, hasn't he? He was, once he got a hold of something, he wouldn't let go.
Yep.
Now, there was actually a call for him to be on the Condon Committee. But,
Right.
of course, they weren't having any of that because they knew he was pro-UFO. And you can imagine how different ufology may have turned out if they had have included him. If he was included even. But alas, that wasn't to be, and unfortunately, it got to MacDonald. He took it so seriously, and it became a passion, and it cost him his life in the end. It became a suicide. Was it 1971? I think he committed suicide.
Was it the one jumped from the hospital window? Was that him?
No, that was Forrestal.
Oh, right.
That's only speculation. He was involved in UFOs with MacDonald. There's no speculation at all. He was. They took away his funding thanks to Philip Klass. He wrote a letter to his university. I think it was University of Arizona that he was affiliated with, and he was ridiculed in the scientific community because it was like Galileo or Copernicus, wasn't it? He was a man ahead of his time, but nobody seen it at the time. Or didn't want to see it, put it that way. MacDonald's passion ended up costing him his marriage, and then unfortunately his life, his career was going downhill as well. But a lot of that was down to our favourite man, Philip J. Klass.
Yep. You want us to carry on?
So we can carry on. Yeah.
5. Initial alerting of Lakenheath GCA and RTCC. The official files give no indication of any further UFO radar sightings
We lost
by
Ed for
Bentwaters
some reason
GCA
too.
from 2200 until 2255Z. But at the latter time, another fast-moving target was picked up 30 miles E of Bentwaters, heading almost due west at a speed given as 2,000 to 4,000 miles per hour. It passed almost directly over Bentwaters, disappearing from their GCA scope for the usual beam angle reasons. When within 2 to 3 miles, the Condon report intimates that this close-in disappearance is diagnostic of AP, which seems to be some sort of tacit over-acceptance of the 1952 Borden-Vickers hypothesis, and then moving on until it disappeared from the scope 30 miles, W of Bentwaters. Very significantly, this radar tracking of the passage of the unidentified target was matched by concurrent visual observations, by personnel on the ground looking up and also from an overhead aircraft looking down. Both visual reports involved only a light described as blurred out by its high speed, but since the aircraft, identified as AC-47 by the Lakenheath non-com whose letter called this case to the attention of the Colorado Project, was flying only at 4,000 feet, the altitude of the unknown object is bracketed within rather narrow bounds. No mention of any sonic boom appears, but the total number of seemingly quite credible reports of UFOs moving at speeds far above sonic values, and yet not emitting booms, is so large that one must count this as just one more instance of many currently inexplicable phenomena associated with the UFO problem. The reported speed is not fast enough for a meteor, nor does the low-altitude flat trajectory and absence of a concussive shock wave match any meteoric hypothesis. That there was visual confirmation from observation points both above and below this fast-moving radar-tracked object must be viewed as adding still further credence to, and scientific interest in, the prior 3 Bentwaters radar sightings of the previous hour.
Yeah, just to make it clear, the Colorado Project was the Condon Committee. They're the same thing. But just in case that's confusing anybody.
It is confusing.
Mm.
Yeah. What did they have 2 different names?
Well, it was it was the university that they used for the scientific research, you see. And of course, the taxpayers' money went to the Colorado University. That's the way it was done, you see. So it was made to look like a legitimate scientific research project.
I'm surprised we've only got 8 people watching today. I thought people would be interested.
Yeah, well, it's getting a bit long-winded now. We can move on from here if you like, you know.
8 billion people in the world here, and we only got 8 people watching. It's kind of sad, really. But anyway, where's all the UFO? This is the 8 real UFO people in the whole world, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway,
I think the reader puts a lot of people off as well. You know, Paul.
The what?
The reader puts a lot of people off. Yeah.
Well, what's wrong
with
the reader?
I think a lot of people just don't. I don't find it too bad, but I think a lot of people just don't like that electronic voice, you know.
Well, I don't know how you can tell that's electronic. Anyway, I think the lack of images doesn't help. Really, when they're talking about formations and things, it'd be good to see drawings of what they mean and how they merged into one big blob on the radar scope. That sort of thing gives you some things to watch while you're actually listening, you know. This is why TV takes off, because it's got all that FX added to it. You know, that's why unidentified throws some
it's
stuff
got the
in.
visual aspect,
Yeah, so you can understand what they're seeing. Well, in fact, I would have thought they would have done a visual for that guy explaining about the 3 UFOs approaching that high altitude jet. But instead they used laser pointers on the show. But anyway, you'll get to see it when you get a chance.
Hour. Apparently immediately after the 2255Z events, Bentwaters GCA alerted GCA Lakenheath, which lay off to its west-northwest. The answers to questions 2A and 2B of the AFR 200-2 format on P253 of the Condon report seem to imply that Lakenheath ground observers were alerted in time to see a luminous object come in at an estimated altitude of 2,000 to 2,500 feet. And on a heading towards SW. The lower estimated altitude and the altered heading do not match the Bentwaters sighting, and the ambiguity so inherent in the AFR 200-2 format simply cannot be eliminated here, so the precise timing is not certain. All that seems certain here is that, at or subsequent to the Bentwaters alert message, Lakenheath ground observers saw a luminous object come in out of the NE at low altitude, then stop and take up an easterly heading and resume motion eastward out of sight. The precise time sequence of the subsequent observations is not clearly deducible from the Lakenheath TWX sent in compliance with AFR 200-2. But that many very interesting events, scientifically very baffling events, soon took place is clear from the report. No follow-up, from Blue Book or other USAF sources, was undertaken, and so this potentially very important case, like hundreds of others, simply sent into the Blue Book files unclarified. I am forced to stress that nothing reveals so clearly the past years of scientifically inadequate UFO investigation as a few days' visit to Wright-Patterson AFB and a diligent reading of Blue Book case reports. No one with any genuine scientific interest in solving the UFO problem would have let accumulate so many years of reports like this one without seeing to it that the UFO reporting and follow-up investigations were brought into entirely different status from that in which they have lain for over 20 years. Deficiencies having been noted, I next catalogue, without benefit of the exact time ordering that is so crucial to full assessment of any UFO event, the intriguing observations and events at or near Lakenheath subsequent to the 2255Z alert from Bentwaters. 6. Non-chronological summary of Lakenheath sightings, 2255Z0330Z. A. Visual observations from ground. As noted 2 paragraphs above, following the 2255Z alert from GCA Bentwaters, USAF ground observers at the Lakenheath RAF station observed a luminous object come in on a southwesterly heading, stop, and then move off out of sight to the east. Subsequently, at an unspecified time, 2 moving white lights were seen, and ground observers stated one white light joined up with another, and both disappeared in formation together. Recall earlier radar observations of merging of targets seen by Bentwaters GCA. No discernible features of these luminous sources were noted by ground observers, but both the observers and radar operators concurred in their report description that the objects were traveling at terrific speeds and then stopping and changing course immediately. In a passage of the original Blue Book report, which was for some reason not included in the version presented in the Condon report, this concordance of radar and visual observations is underscored. Thus 2 radar sets, i.e., Lakenheath GCA and RATCC radars, and 3 ground observers report substantially same. Later in the original Lakenheath report, this same concordance is reiterated. The fact that radar and ground visual observations were made on its rapid acceleration and abrupt stop certainly lend credulence, to the report. Since the date of this incident coincides with the date of peak frequency of the Perseid meteors, one might ask whether any part of the visual observations could have been due to Perseids. The basic Lakenheath report to Blue Book notes that the ground observers reported unusual amount of shooting stars in sky, indicating that the erratically moving lights were readily distinguishable from meteors.
No.
The report further remarks thereon that the objects seen were definitely not shooting stars, as there were no trails as are usual with such sightings. Furthermore, the stopping and course reversals are incompatible with any such hypothesis in the first place. AFR 200-2 stipulates that observer be asked to compare the UFO to the size of various familiar objects when held at arm's length. Item 1B in the format.
Ooh, what's that noise?
In answer to that item, the report states, one observer from ground stated on first observation object was about size of golf ball. As object continued in flight it became a pinpoint dot. Even allowing for the usual inaccuracies in such estimates, this further rules out Perseids, since that shower yields only meteors of quite low luminosity. In summary of the ground visual observations, it appears that 3 ground observers at Lakenheath saw at least 2 luminous objects, saw these over an extended though indefinite time period, saw them execute sharp course changes, saw them remain motionless at least once, saw 2 objects merge into a single luminous object at one juncture, and reported motions in general accord with concurrent radar observations. These ground visual observations, in themselves, constitute scientifically interesting UFO report material. Neither astronomical nor aeronautical explanations, nor any meteorological optical explanations, match well those reported phenomena. One could certainly wish for a far more complete and time-fixed report on these visual observations, but even the above information suffices to suggest some unusual events. The unusualness will be seen to be even greater on next examining the ground radar observations from Lakenheath. And even stronger interest emerges as we then turn, last of all, to the airborne visual and airborne radar observations made near Lakenheath. B. Ground radar observations at Lakenheath. The GCA surveillance radar at Lakenheath is identified as a CPN-4, while the RATCC search radar was a CPS-5, as the non-com correctly recalled in his letter. Because the report makes clear that these two sets were concurrently following the unknown targets, it is relevant to note that they have different wavelengths, pulse repetition frequencies, and scan rates, which, for reasons that need not be elaborated here, tends to rule out several radar anomaly hypotheses. Example, interference echoes from a distant radar, second time around effects, AP. However, the reported maneuvers are so unlike any of those spurious effects that it seems almost unnecessary to confront those possibilities here.
Hey, thank you, Ken.
As with the ground visual observations, so also with these radar report items, the AFR 200-2 format limitations, plus the other typical deficiencies of reporting of UFO events preclude reconstruction in detail, and in time order, of all the relevant events. I get the impression that the first object seen visually by ground observers was not radar tracked, although this is unclear from the report to Blue Book. One target whose motions were jointly followed both on the CPS-5 at the Radar Air Traffic Control Center, and on the shorter range, faster scanning CPN-4 at the Lakenheath GCA unit, was tracked from 6 miles west to about 20 miles SW, where target stopped and assumed a stationary position for 5 minutes. Target then assumed a heading northwesterly. I presume this was intended to read northeasterly, and the non-com so indicates in his recollective account of what appears to be the same maneuvers, into the station, and stopped 2 miles NW of station. Lakenheath GCA reports 3 to 4 additional targets were doing the same maneuvers in the vicinity of the station. Thus 2 radar sets and 3 ground observers report substantially same. Note that the quoted item includes the full passage omitted from the Condon report version, and note that it seems to imply that this devious path with 2 periods of stationary hovering was also reported by the visual observers. However, the latter is not entirely certain because of ambiguities in the structure of the basic report, as forced into the AFR 200-2 format. At some time, which context seems to imply as rather later in the night, the radar sightings went on until about 0330Z. Lakenheath Radar Air Traffic Control Center observed object 17 miles east of station making sharp rectangular course of flight. This maneuver was not conducted by circular path, but on right angles at speeds of 600 to 800 miles per hour. Object would stop and start with amazing rapidity. The report remarks that the controllers are experienced and technical skills were used in attempts to determine just what the objects were. When the target would stop on the scope, the MTI was used. However, the target would still appear on the scope.
Robert?
The latter is puzzling.
It's only me.
MTI, moving target indication, is a standard feature on search or surveillance radars that eliminates ground returns and returns from large buildings and other motionless objects. This very curious feature of display of stationary modes, while the MTI was on, adds further strong argument to the negation of any hypothesis of anomalous propagation of ground returns. It was as if the unidentified target, while seeming to hover motionless, was actually undergoing small amplitude but high-speed jittering motion to yield a scope displayed return despite the MTI.
And we also got a wee
Since
bit
just
more
such
CPU
jittery
than
motion
normal,
has
which
been
is
reported
good.
in visual UFO sightings on many occasions, and since the coarse resolution of a PPI display would not permit radar detection of such motion if its amplitude were below, say, 1 or 200 meters, this could conceivably account for the persistence of the displayed return during the episodes of stationary hovering, despite use of MTI. The portion of the radar sightings just described seems to have been vividly recollected by the retired USAF non-com, who first called this case to the attention of the Colorado group. Sometime after the initial Bentwaters alert, he had his men at the RATCC scanning all available scopes, various scopes set at various ranges. He wrote that, one controller noticed a stationary target on the scopes about 20 to 25 miles southwest. This was unusual, as a stationary target should have been eliminated unless it was moving at a speed of at least 40 to 45 knots. And yet we could detect no movement at all. We watched this target on all the different scopes for several minutes, and I called the GCA unit at Lakenheath to see if they had this target on their scope in the same geographical location. As we watched, the stationary target started moving at a speed of 400 to 600 miles per hour, in a north-northeast direction, until it reached a point about 20 miles north-northwest of Lakenheath. There was no slow start or build-up to this speed. It was constant from the second it started to move until it stopped. This description, written 11 years after the event, matches the 1956 intelligence report from the Lakenheath USAF unit so well, even seeming to avoid the typographical direction error that the Lakenheath TWX contained, that one can only assume that he was deeply impressed by this whole incident. That, of course, is further indicated by the very fact that he wrote the Colorado group about it in the first place. His letter, Condon Report, P249, adds that the target made several changes in location, always in a straight line, always at about 600 miles per hour, and always from a standing or stationary point to his next stop at constant speed. No build-up in speed at all. These changes in location varied from 8 miles to 20 miles in length. No set pattern at any time. Time spent stationary between movements also varied from 3 or 4 minutes to 5 or 6 minutes. Because his account jibes so well with the basic Blue Book file report in the several particulars in which it can be checked, the foregoing quotation from the letter as reproduced in the Condon report stands as meaningful indication of the highly unconventional behavior of the unknown aerial target. Even allowing for some recollective uncertainties, the non-com's description of the behavior of the unidentified radar target lies so far beyond any meteorological, astronomical, or electronic explanation as to stand as one challenge to any suggestions that UFO reports are of negligible scientific interest.
Yeah, of course. Now he's getting into all the radar systems, and it's getting, even for someone like me who tries to keep in touch with this, it's getting difficult. But what we have established is it's an excellent case, and even more so, we've established that Blue Book and the Condon Committee have made a complete pig's ear of it out of this case, haven't they? They haven't properly, they just haven't done it justice at all. I mean, look how McDonald's gone to trouble to piecing it together as well as he has. Now, if it had had the original data, it could have been so much better. You can see how harshly critical throughout he was of Blue Book and Edward Condon and his stupid committee. Now, I'm glad to say they got caught out, and it was in quite a bizarre way, and we're going to look at that next. So we're pretty much done with that case.
Okay.
Here we go. It's known as the $500,000 trick.
What trick?
Yeah, the $500,000 trick. Yeah, because it was taxpayers' money, and they got caught absolutely cold.
So where's the link? Oh. Should have done paste and enter. Didn't we just do this one?
Yeah, we just done that.
Where's the link you gave me? This one we already read.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hold on.
This? Let me just redo it just in case.
Yeah. No, it is the one. No, don't do that again. Yeah, that could have been my mistake.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, that's running so much faster today. Just the extra 10% CPU seems to be... I'm not sure, because Jitsi did some changes we noticed when we started today. So maybe they've done some improvements on the speed there for us. So, yeah, we're just working quite nicely. Oh, it's this horrible facsimile.
Oh no! That's a copy of the original memo, Paul. You need to scroll past that till you get to the proper text.
Yeah, you can't read that anyway.
No, you can't.
This
There you
text. Start here, transcript.
Yeah.
Alright, end of memo. Okay.
Yeah.
Transcription. August 9th, 1966. Memo 2, E. James Archer and Thurston E. Manning. From Robert J. Lowe. Subject, some thoughts on the UFO project. Jim and Ted. I have pondered the UFO project and talked to a number of persons about it. Here are a few thoughts on the subject. Branscombe is very much against it. Gordon Little thinks it would be a disaster. George Denton, likewise, is negative. Their arguments, combined, run like this: in order to undertake such a project, one has to approach it objectively. That is, one has to admit the possibility that such things as UFOs exist. It is not respectable to give serious consideration to such a possibility. Believers, in other words, remain outcasts. Branscombe suggested that one would have to go so far as to consider the possibility that saucers, if some of the observations are verified, behave according to a set of physical laws unknown to us. The simple act of admitting these possibilities just as possibilities puts us beyond the pale, and we would lose more in prestige in the scientific community than we could possibly gain by undertaking the investigation. Little indicated you do these things sometimes if there is a real national need. You do them in spite of possible adverse consequences. But in this case, there is no real national need. Branscombe compares the situation to Rhine and the ESP study at Duke. Walter Roberts, on the other hand, very much favors our undertaking it. He tried to get Will Kellogg, who is Associate Director of NCAR for the Laboratory of Atmospheric Sciences, to undertake it. Kellogg is very interested and almost did.
And he's no Cyril.
He felt, however, he was too committed to do it. Walt hopes very much that we will. He says that he has information that Colorado really is the first choice of the Air Force, that others have not been approached and turned it down. He thinks, contrary to Little, that there is a very urgent need to do it, and he feels that we will gain a great deal in favor among the right circles by performing a critically needed service. He said that we must do it right objectively and critically, and avoid publicity, and all that sort of thing. But having the project here would not put us in the category of scientific kooks. Branscombe says it would be better if the National Academy takes a contract from the Air Force, and then subcontracts the money to us to do the work. He feels it would look much better that way, and I agree. There are, however, measures short of this that would accomplish almost the same thing, i.e., having a very distinguished group of consultants and/or advisors, having a committee in the Academy to whom our final report could be submitted. Comments. The analogy with ESP, Rhine, and Duke is only partially valid.
Sorry? What did you say?
Here comes the video bang quite shortly now, so listen closely.
All right.
Valid. The Duke study was done by believers who, after they had finished, convinced almost no one. Our study would be conducted almost exclusively by non-believers who, although they couldn't possibly prove a negative result, could and probably. E. J. Archer and T. E. Manning. Page 2. Would add an impressive body of evidence that there is no reality to the observations. The trick would be, I think, to describe the project so that, to the public, it would appear a totally objective study, but, to the scientific community, would present the image of a group of non-believers trying their best to be objective, but having an almost zero expectation of finding a saucer. One way to do this would be to stress investigation, not of the physical phenomena, but rather of the people who do the observing, the psychology and sociology of persons and groups who report seeing UFOs. If the emphasis were put here, rather than on examination of the old question of the physical reality of the saucer, I think the scientific community would quickly get the message. There is another reason, it seems to me, to do this.
Okay,
Except
stop it after
possibly in a
this.
field like optical meteorology, I can't imagine a paper coming out of the study that would be publishable in a prestigious physical science journal. I can quite easily imagine, however, that psychologists, sociologists, and psychiatrists might well generate scholarly publications as a result of their investigations of the saucer observers.
Well, that didn't happen with John Mack, did it?
Okay, so just what happened here? Well, it was Robert Lowe. Yeah, it was second in command to Edward Condon, who asked a Miss Armstrong, who was the secretary, to go and look for a particular UFO case which is in the files. But the files are poorly organized. And while looking for this case, she stumbled upon the memo. She took the memo out and showed it to the likes of Norman Levine and David Saunders and the other scientists on the group, who realized then they were just Muppets in somebody else, or just pawns in somebody else's game. But there was no intention whatsoever to examine UFOs in a proper light. But their main objective was to focus not on the good cases, but on the psychological cases, which is a nice big word for fruitcake cases. And that's what the Condon Committee did. Tinfoil hat wearers, yes. So what happened from there? Well, the memo, because they were fairly disgusted about this, they realized they'd been mugged. The memo found its way to a guy called John J. Fuller, a UFO researcher, who passed it on to Donald Kehoe, who passed it on to James McDonald. And next thing, it's in the media, and it became known as the $500,000 trick. And it was taxpayers' money. The people weren't happy at all. So when Edward Condon had a phone call from Lowe telling him, "Oh no, this is what's happened. The media have got hold of it." He threw such a wobbler, got so worked up about it, he had a heart attack a couple of days later. Genuine story, actually happened.
$500,000 is nothing, though, is it? Though, what would it be worth back then?
It was quite a lot then.
But yeah, the government's wasting money all the time on silly stuff. Even today, you think
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Paul. It was supposed to be an objective, and it was anything but objective. So if anyone points out to you there's no such thing as a cover-up, it's all a conspiracy, just point them to this memo. Yeah,
I'd like to know where all the money went to, though. If they spent that much on it, who pocketed out of it?
Well, they did spend it. They did spend it, that's for sure. But Edward Condon, he never investigated a single UFO case, not a single one. And he was making statements in the press. This was during the investigation that there's nothing to this flying saucer business. I know it's rubbish, and this is because before they'd even concluded the study. So you can see now what the Condon Committee was. It was there to rubbish UFOs from the beginning. It had absolutely no intention of studying them in any kind of serious matter whatsoever. And that you've got it there in black and white. And this isn't a leaked document. Well, it was leaked, but it's known to be genuine. Now,
it's a memo.
Norman Levine and David Saunders were both sacked the next day. Once this reached the press office, and it got out on the front page, actually.
Right.
And then half of the staff, in disgust and retaliation for the sacking of those two guys, who were both scientists, by the way, who thought they were partaking in something independent and science-worthy. They were sacked, and so did half the other staff went out with protest. So the whole thing is an absolute shambles, an absolute disgrace.
Not surprised though. We hear about stuff like this all the time, even today.
Yeah, I know, but this is just one occasion where they got caught out, which is kind of cool, isn't it?
Yep. Well,
I don't know if there's anything more to read out there, Paul.
Not sure. I think it got to the end, didn't it?
Observers.
Is that the end?
I have not, of course,
Oh, no,
heard
not
the
quite.
story presented by the Air Force people. That comes Wednesday morning, the 10th. Ed Condon and Will Kellogg have heard it, however, and they say the project is presented in a very reasonable light. It is premature to have much of an opinion, but I'm inclined to feel at this early stage that, if we set up the thing right, and take pains to get the proper people involved, and have success in presenting the image we want to present to the scientific community, we could carry the job off to our benefit. At least, it ought not be rejected out of hand. Notes. Walt Roberts pledged NGAR's cooperation and assistance, especially in optical meteorology, a very thinly populated field in the U.S. In Boulder it is represented only at NCAR. The university persons who have expressed an interest in the project so far are chief types. We'll have to be sure, if we take on the work, that we can find properly qualified people who will actually do the work. End of memo.
Yeah, so they did find qualified people. But those qualified people, when they found that memo, realised just exactly where they stood.
Where was Hynek in this?
Hynek was invited as a consultant, but he was kept out of many of the meetings because they were doing their own thing. Hynek too was highly critical of the Condon Committee. In his later books, he was anyway. And of course, this ran between 1965 and 1967. By then, Hynek was, well, he had turned then. He was a believer then.
Okay.
But yeah,
next.
it's but there's a little piece of history there, $500,000 trick. And you know, people really wanted an answer to the UFO question back then.
What year was this again?
Yeah. It's the Condon Committee went from 65 to 67. 67 to 69, sorry, yeah.
I think you could buy a house for $2,000 back in those days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is 1966 from the memo. So even before it started, they'd already made their plans on how to run it and how to fool the public and how to fool the science community. It was actually more than that in the end, Paul. They needed a top-up of money to complete the 2 years.
Let's see if Google will translate that for us.
Oh, I'll go about 20 million.
No, 3 trillion. 3 billion.
No.
Let's see. The equivalent of purchasing power about 4 billion. Was it? Am I misreading it?
No,
4 million. 4 million, sorry. It's equivalent to 4 million in 2020. Yeah. So it's still not much money, because I hear 50 million spent on defunding the police in New York or whatever it is, Seattle, and you think, this is 4 million on this is nothing. And you got 25 million, is it, for the ATIP, which is way bigger than that.
It still had Blue Book running concurrently alongside it, didn't it? So between the two of them, and that's the whole point of the Condon Committee, was to close Blue Book down, to say there's nothing here, nothing of interest, so now we can close down the whole thing, you know?
Yeah. There's not enough money being spent on UFOs, I would say.
Well, we don't know how much money is being spent with black money doing.
Well, looking at that. But then again, It was a fake study, so that $4 million in today's money was just wasted.
Well, yeah, and of course it doesn't matter how much it is. If you're paying anything in tax and
Yeah.
it turns out to be a scam like that, you're going to be a little upset, aren't you? And a lot of members of the public were upset about this, and well, you can imagine the reaction in the UFO community when it came out. It was all hell. So you can see his name there, Robert J. Lowe.
How low can someone get?
Yeah, well, quite ironic, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, what's the next topic? A B29 incident.
By the way, the people he's talking to there, James Archer and Thurston E. Manning, they're heads of the university. They're not military people. But anyway, this is probably bothering people now. But just remember, if anyone tells you there's no such thing as a UFO cover-up, then just show them that.
Yep.
With plenty more evidence too. Okay, so we've got 2 cases in one here.
So not all UFO stuff is meant to be sensational, flashy lights, and to keep your attention span for 10 minutes.
But I think you ignore history at your peril. Do you know what I mean? Just to think that the old stuff is not of any importance anymore is a huge oversight.
It's more that a lot of it hasn't been researched properly or got whitewashed, and it's this you just don't know what you can do with it compared to the current stuff that's coming out all the time. And of course, if someone sees what these guys are seeing, puts it up on MUFON, and we get to actually see a video of it, then we say, finally, we got something. But we've yet to see that ever come to light. You think with today's technology, we would have documented it well and truly by now, but something's still
you've
going
got
on.
things like Skyhub, and now it might take years to perfect, but no one can stop us, doing something like that. Data collection.
Yeah, because it's now home users technology, right? That they
have
back in
right,
2004.
Toilet, and I'll leave that link for you.
Oh, the first pee stop.
Second one, I think.
Oh, it's the second one. You snuck in the one when you were getting a drink the other time, were you? Oh, we haven't got our pee and alien up. And while that's loading, we can have the pee and alien. Everything's going way good at the moment. I'll just make it a little small window. Alien peeing. Come on, Robert, you can aim better than that. That's Robbie the alien. Okay. I was meant to untick it. I placed for about 3 minutes, so it should be like, if I do it right, should time perfectly for him to come back. But it's probably a wee bit out of sync now. I think he's normally about 3 minutes, isn't he? We should have like a running total amount of times that Robert's had a pee on our show. There you go, Susan. You can start. Maybe you can do like an end of year thing. See who gets closest to the number of pee counts, and wins a merchandise T-shirt or something. Yeah, we got. I got a lot of bugs and upgrades sorted out, I think, and just that wee bit of extra CPU makes a wee bit difference. Yeah, you can see it does go on quite a long time, the animation. But it probably should have ended by now. It was about 3 minutes or so. It plays. Here he comes. But I can end it. It would have been ended about now, I suppose. Did that click? I didn't hear a beep. That should stop it. There you go, it did. Nice. Okay, you're back with us. Okay, where do we go from here?
Yep.
I have to scale this one down a bit. So this is called a BOAC. A BOAC.
Yeah, it's the British Overseas Airways company or something. Yeah, it's British Overseas Airways something.
I did actually try to look some pictures on
which
this.
Is now British Airways.
And the original 1954 footage. So that's the only images I really found. That's that crazy looking plane that's got like double windows at the front. Strange looking plane.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure we played a bit of this and we got sort of told off.
No, we never.
Flying jellyfish. So I'll be interested to see where that one goes. But that's talking about Project 1947. BOAC's Flying Jellyfish. I'm not sure what that's about. Fate magazine.
Nor do I. No idea.
No idea. That's what it's
what you should be looking at first, Paul, is the B29 incident over the Gulf.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that's the images I found. There wasn't much on it. But there was a couple of interviews, and of course BBC have claimed copyright and they won't let you play it without permission. Where do we read it from? I suppose from there onwards, see how we go. Seems like a lot of reading on this one too. And
no, not really. There's 2 cases here.
Yeah, I've got it selected now. Let's see how it goes.
UFO aircraft encounters, the BOAC Stratocruiser incident, and the B29 Gulf of Mexico incident. Posted by JCROG08 on July 19, 2009 at 11:32 GMT. Courtesy, UFOcasebook.com. These 2 cases took place in 1950s, the same decade that a major wave was happening, with great documented cases like the DC Flap, the Tremonton Fleet, the Mariana Film, Lakenheath Bentwaters, Edwards AFB sighting, and the Lubbock Lights among the tops. Both of these cases consist of radar/visual reports of an aircraft UFO encounter. Both of these cases are classified in the Blue Book Unknowns. The following cases are presented in chronological order. Chapter Summary. The B29 Incident over the Gulf. The BOAC Stratocruiser Incident. My conclusions of both cases. 1. The B29 Incident over the Gulf. Courtesy, nicap.org. HINET classification, CE1, R/V. In the early morning hours on December 6, 1952, during a training mission over the Gulf of Mexico, the crew of a B29 Superfortress, cruising at 18,000 feet, made radar and visual contact with multiple UFOs. The crew was returning to Florida from a night practice flight, and was about 100 miles south of the Louisiana coast under clear weather and bright moonlight very early in the morning. At around 5:25 a.m. Lieutenant Sid Coleman checked his radar scope to see if he could see the coastline. What he saw was a URE, unknown radar echo, at the edge of the screen, that in the next sweep had gone 13 miles in that brief pause between the sweeps. Another URE appeared on the screen, and appeared to be heading right for the B29 at 5,240, by manual calculations, mph. This is only the first incident in the case. I will cover the rest below, but first let's go over some details of the crew. Important details: the crew. First LT, Norman Cara's visual observation. First LT, W.M. Nauman,
Lieutenant.
J.R. Instrument Navigation Master Sergeant B.R. Purcell, Assistant Radar Operator Staff Sergeant W.M. J. DeRouse, Gunner 2nd Lt. Robert J. Eckert, Navigation Staff Sergeant H.D. Shogren, Radar Operator Captain John Harder, Flight Commander Lieutenant Sidney Coleman, Radar Operator Master Sergeant Bailey Purcell, Assistant Radar Operator Staff Sergeant Ferris, Assistant Radar Operator. Crew had several hundred hours of flying time and experience combined between them. Weather, radar, and location information. Weather was clear and windless with a temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. All oil refineries were spotted and accounted for as well. There were 25 hits in 10 minutes. UREs seen on multiple scopes by 3 different personnel. Radar was working properly according to crew. Location was around 100 miles south of Louisiana and 190 miles east of Galveston, Texas. All UREs, also called UFOs in this case because of the visuals, were at around the same altitude as the plane, which was 18,000 feet.
Yeah, so UREs
location of encounter.
And identified radar
Note,
echoes.
the other research files on this case included.
So what's this here?
Yeah, you want to have a look at the map?
Yeah, I didn't actually put it up on Google. So location of the sighting. So it looks like it's a recent map, 2009. And it's near that strange underwater feature, is it, here? Where they said there might be some submarine bases or whatever, UFO bases.
Certainly a shelf there, isn't there?
Yeah. Louisiana. We'll just carry on then.
This case, included in sources section, give different coordinates, but those are obviously erroneous once you plug them in, as it would place the aircraft close to the Sea of Cortez. This is likely due to the poor condition of the Blue Book files. My information was computed using logic, and the original Blue Book map you can find here. The exact coordinates may differ by a small margin, but I assure you they are close within an acceptable margin of error. The rest of the sightings. As I have shown in the opening, the initial contact was made at about 5:25 a.m. on December 6, 1952, 100 miles south of the Louisiana coastline. The initial URE contacts, which were 3, were clocked at speeds of around 5,000 miles per hour. The following is the summary of the remainder of the incidents as initially recorded by Major Donald Keyhole and subsequently NICAP. When Lt. Coleman alerted his captain of the speed of the URE, the captain did not believe him, stating, "That's impossible, recalibrate your scope." The speed was the same as before. After the initial contacts were recorded, the action picked up immensely, with the next set of contacts coming just as Coleman was rechecking the calculations when Master Sergeant Bailey spotted another 2 UREs. Lieutenant Eckert, the navigator, spotted the 2 more UREs as well. At this time the UFOs were on all 3 scopes, which were recalibrated to show no malfunctions. As an unknown URE was spotted on radar, at 3 o'clock Master Sergeant Bailey Purcell witnessed a white-blue object streak by in a blur under the bomber's right wing. At this time 3 more UREs appeared on the radar screens at an apparent speed of over 5,000 miles
Shame
per
we've
hour,
still got no
around
pictures
Mach
for
7,
that, you know.
on a bearing dead ahead, 12 o'clock.
You can find
The
them.
3 UFOs veered to miss the bomber by some miles. There now was a brief pause of activity 6 minutes into the incident that lasted only briefly, as another group of UREs appeared on the scopes at the same speed as before. At the 4 o'clock position 2 more UFOs of the same white-blue color streaked by the aircraft. This was seen visually by Staff Sergeant Ferris. 40 miles behind the B29 5 more UREs appeared, which actually were observed on radar to
Is your
swerve
screen
into the path
corrupted
of the
there
aircraft,
today?
and were
Yes.
calculated to
Big
be there
time.
in 3 seconds,
Is it?
48,000
Okay.
miles per hour, or around Mach 47. But then the UREs slowed down to match the bomber's speed almost
It
instantly.
says excellent connection here.
That is a
That's the reason I
deceleration
asked.
from Mach 47 to match the subsonic speed of the B29, cruise speed around 220 miles per hour, near instantly. The UFOs kept pace with the aircraft for around 10 seconds, then quickly picked up speed and merged to one side. They then proceeded to merge into one object, on the radar scope, and zoom off at around 9,000 miles per hour. Coleman alerted the captain.
Perhaps you should drop in and out
Captain,
again.
did you see that?
Fix it, I think.
Yes, I saw it, said Harder. We clocked it, said Coleman. You won't believe this, it was making over 9,000 miles an hour. I believe it, all right, Harder said grimly. That's just what I figured. www.nikap.org. Alternate
No.
explanations and official conclusions.
It's very strange.
When the crew landed, they were immediately questioned by intelligence officers with the USAF. They had radioed ahead and alerted the ground of their incident. Here are some statements, all courtesy of nikap.org. Captain Harder, one group of blips was noted, after the set was calibrated, to arc about and swing in behind us at about 30 miles, and maintain speed and distance for approximately 10 seconds. Contact was broken off at 0535, after a group of the blips merged into a 1/2-inch arc, and proceeded across the scope, and off it at a computed speed of over 9,000 mph. Lieutenant Coleman, I noticed one UFO approach our aircraft at a terrific rate of speed. I timed it as best I could with a stopwatch over a known distance, and the flight engineer computed the speed at 5,240 m.p.h. I alerted the entire crew to look for the objects visually, and flashes of light were noted. The closest the objects came was approximately 20 miles. I saw about 20 objects in all. I recalibrated the set, and there was no change. The objects were small and possibly round, with the exception of one very large return shaped as follows, 1/2-inch curved arc. I also noticed a large return come up to within 40 miles of our tail from behind and then disappear. To the best of my knowledge, I believe that this object was real and moved at an extremely high speed, and was not a set malfunction or optical illusion. Master Sergeant Bailey, the radar operator, clocked the object, the first one seen, and I computed the airspeed of the object to average 5,240 mph twice during the period. The radar operator reported an object to be passing at 3 o'clock. Upon looking out the window, I saw a blue-white streak travel front to rear and disappear under the wing. Staff Sergeant Ferris, after the radar operator reported objects approaching at 4 o'clock, I immediately looked in that position and saw two flashes of a blue-white nature for approximately 3 seconds. I have confirmed these statements from the official Blue Book documents, pages 973 to 76,
A lot of
985,
pages.
1003. Unfortunately, they are greatly degraded and in bad perspective. For ease of viewing, I am using these text-only statements, which I have authenticated as stated. As far as alternate conclusions go in this case, there are very few. That is why this is listed in the Blue Book Unknowns file.
Xerox and all that.
The
It's
leading
terrible.
candidates are a meteor shower and mirage, but that is it. We will look at those now. Meteors. Blue Book only put forth this theory in the middle of the investigation, because the Geminid meteor showers were taking place at this time.
Not swamp gas.
But it was never taken as an acceptable answer for the case for many reasons that are obvious, such as the intelligent maneuvers, slowing down and speeding up, merging into one object. Mirage. If one is to speculate that a mirage of either an oil refinery, star, or meteor could account for the visual sightings, then one must also account for the radar contacts. This by itself seems impossible by any probable stretch. Meteor/mirage combination, more likely than either of the first two by themselves. This theory was never put forth by anyone to my knowledge until now. Theoretically, it is possible that the visual sightings could have been caused by a mirage of a higher meteor, or a meteor making it into the lower atmosphere. The radar hits could have been caused by echoes off of meteors, making it to the lower atmosphere as well. But this scenario is highly unlikely, as any astronomer would tell you. Official conclusions.
Yeah.
There have been no skeptical organization, such as the Condon Committee, to offer comments about this case that I could find in my research. Actually, the only statement other than Blue Books came from a NASA scientist who became their unofficial UFO investigator, Paul R. Hill, who had the following to say on the case. Several changes, of course, were made, and 2 phases of acceleration were performed. Speeds of 5.000 to 9.000 miles per hour, with maneuvers and motionless capability exclude any meteor whatsoever as it is too slow, and exclude any known human flying machine of 1952 and ever since, as it is much too fast. Planes cruising at 5,000 miles per hour, at an altitude of 18.000 feet, would simply immediately disintegrate.
Yeah.
Rockets of that time did not have the observed maneuverability. The fact that the objects arrived head-on, turned back, paced the plane, went away to join with a much larger one which then fled away at an impossible speed is indicative of an intelligent-driven operation. No known human plane or rocket emits a blue light.
The last case now, can't you?
Neither meteors nor planes nor rockets do not make rendezvous.
Yeah.
No rocket or plane has the size seen by the crew for the largest object on the radar scope. www.ufology.net. This was the same agreement that Blue Book and other ufological associations have had about the case. As I have said in the opening, this case is still officially listed in the unknown category by the USAF. Helpful links on case. NICAP Case Directory Blue Book Documents, pages 973-76, 9.
Yep, what do you want?
No, there's nothing there. It's you just don't need to read that stuff out there. So now we're moving on to another similar incident with the same ilk.
Yeah, it's that strange looking plane.
Yeah, that didn't have like 2 stories of passengers. It was like kind of an Airbus sort of design.
Two, the BOAC.
Yeah, let's have a look. Is it 2-story or 3-story?
I'm not sure,
Certainly a deep looking craft.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
And it's a prop plane, which means it would be quite noisy, I would have thought. It looks like a craft that Howard Hughes would design. Yeah, so it looks like... Well,
didn't Howard Hughes have something to do with Boeing?
Yeah, he probably was the one to design this one. Oh, that's what I'm saying. But yeah, you can see the pilots have the rear windows there. And underneath must be, I don't know, first class. I don't know. You can see front windows of the plane as it's landed and stuff. That would be pretty cool. See how the pilot sees it. Unless it's the top deck is all passengers and these lights, windows at the bottom of where the pilots are. But I would doubt that very much.
But either way, it's a commercial aircraft.
Well, it's got a lot of windows there, so it would be good for watching for UFOs, is what I'm saying.
For the passengers.
Yeah.
There's little windows at the front there.
It's certainly got a lot more view than you get on a normal plane, that's what I'm saying.
BOAC Stratocruiser UFO Incident. Courtesy, NICAP.org Hynek Classification, DD. This is another excellent case of UFO aircraft encounters, included in the Blue Book Unknowns, this time in 1954, involving a British commercial airliner's crew and passengers seeing multiple UFOs. A fighter jet was scrambled to intercept the UFO as well, but did not find anything. Despite the lack of radar evidence in this case, the fact that multiple witnesses, crew and passengers, saw it, and it corresponds to another sighting made by a Navy ice cutter hundreds of miles away on the same day gives this case a very interesting aspect to explore. The big, double-decker BOAC, British Overseas Airway Corporation, Boeing Stratocruiser luxury plane, the Centaurus would be followed for 80 miles over the North Atlantic Champagne and Caviar, New York to London slang term, flight.
That's why they got windows at the front.
Important details, the witnesses, and other important information. Captain James Howard, First Officer Lee Boyd, Navigator George Allen, Radio Officer Douglas Scott, Engineer Officer Daniel Godfrey, Engineer Officer William Stewart, Stewardess Daphne Webster. 4 more members of the crew and 12 passengers signed sworn statements about their sighting. Many of the crew were highly distinguished military veterans of World War II. Cloud ceiling was 14,000 feet. Weather at TOS, time of sighting, was clear with unlimited visibility. For some reason the official data from this sighting is not available. Apparently, however, I did find a YouTube video from the British Archives that has a clip from an interview with the captain and crew, as well sketches. The sighting. On June 29, 1954, Flight 510 to 196 took off from New York at 3:03 p.m. EST. About 3 hours, 6:03 p.m. EST. Later, after a detour to route via Cape Cod, the flight was over the St. Lawrence estuary near Seven Islands, Quebec at 19,000 feet, when the captain noticed some strange objects. Captain Howard stated that the objects were moving at the same speed as the flight, which was around 230 knots, 265 miles per hour. The objects appeared to be on a near parallel course to the aircraft, maybe 3 to 4 miles ahead of them on the northwest direction. Howard stated that the objects were below the cloud cover at this time, he guesses at 8,000 feet. When the aircraft crossed the coast of Labrador, the clouds ended, and the UFOs became fully visible. Howard also stated that the UFOs appeared to have ascended nearly to their altitude of 19,000 feet. As mentioned earlier in this section, the weather at TOS was clear with unlimited visibility. The objects remained with the plane for more than enough time for the crew and several passengers to draw sketches and observe the apparent UFO fleet, which was with the Boeing for 20 minutes in all. A statement of the apparent size, shape, and number of unknown objects. There was one large object and 6 smaller globular things. The small ones were strung out in a line, sometimes 3 ahead and 3 behind the large one, sometimes 2 ahead and 4 behind, and so on, but always at the same level. The large object was continually, slowly, changing shape, in the way that a swarm of bees might alter its appearance. They appeared to be opaque and hard-edged, gray in color, no lights or flames visible. www.nicap.org. After about 10 minutes, the airplane was now within VHF communication range of Goose Bay, Labrador. After making contact with the control tower, they asked us to describe what we were seeing and told us that they had an F-94 on patrol and would vector him toward us. The F-94 was a radar-equipped 2-seat fighter. A little later, Goose Bay asked us to change frequency and talk direct to the fighter. On doing so, we learned that he had us in radar contact, no mention of anything else visible. I gave him a bearing of the objects from us, and as I did so I noticed that the small objects had disappeared. My navigator, who was watching them closely at this time, said that they appeared to converge on and enter the large one. As the F-94 approached, the large object dwindled in size, still on the same relative bearing as the Stratocruiser, and after a few seconds disappeared. Captain Howard then started his descent into Goose Bay for the refueling stop, and landed at 1:45 GMT. We were questioned at length by USAF intelligence at Goose Bay, who, incidentally, seemed totally unsurprised at the sighting. They told us there had been several others in the Labrador area recently, said Howard. We left Goose Bay at 3:14 GMT for London, arriving at 12:27 on the 30th. www.nicap.org. Picture of F-94 Starfire courtesy of wikipedia.org. Map of sighting area. Here is an interesting bit of information. Captain Howard subsequently learned that a doctor and his wife, who were on holiday in Massachusetts, had seen a number of objects flying overhead in a northeasterly direction at about the time the Stratocruiser was being held near the coast of Rhode Island. Unfortunately, Goose Bay had only short-range airfield control radar at the time, and the F-94 did not report having tracked the objects on its radar equipment. Since the Stratocruiser left Fort London before the fighter returned, Captain Howard had no opportunity to question the crew. But if the hold was caused by unidentified traffic in the Boston control area, Howard surmised the objects were presumably tracked on radar there. www.nicap.org. It is interesting to note that the exact same type formation of jellyfish, shape-shifting UFOs, was spotted that same day off the coast of Ungava Bay, Canada, by the Navy ice cutter the Edisto. Ungava Bay is hundreds of miles away from the BOAC encounter. Video of interview. Captain James Howard, UFO, June 29, 1954, JFK to London. Sighted over Labrador, Newfoundland at 19,000 feet. Here is a collection of newspaper clippings, courtesy of bluebookarchive.org. Miska Foster 4-184 Miska Foster 4-178 Miska Foster 4-183. After the 20-minute ordeal, the Boeing Superfortress landed in Goose Bay to refuel, and the rest of its flight was without incident. Alternate explanations and official explanations.
Yeah.
Mirage not likely for multiple reasons, the first being that the terrain over Quebec is mountainous and not flat. The horizon was about 250 miles away to the west-northwest over the Otish Mountains. The updrafts from the mountains also tend to cause disruption in the air layers. Secondly, the experts at the Condon Committee concluded a mirage was not possible for this case. Thirdly, the UFOs were too far below the horizon to constitute a mirage. Based on the captain's reports, there is a 30 to 45 degree depression angle for the UFOs. Some other estimates from other researches have put it at 20 to 25 degrees. However, both estimates are many degrees too much to be a mirage based on our current understandings of mirages. Moreover, the captain stated that the objects had climbed to their altitude of 19,000 feet. This would mean the mirage would have made a smooth transition from a mirage below the horizon, inferior mirage, to one above it, superior mirage, with no disruptions between the changeover. This is simply unheard of in mirages. Finally, a mirage has to reflect off of something. Considering the angle of the sun, there seems to be nothing that possibly could have been at that altitude to cause the mirage. For a detailed scientific report weighing the pros and cons of a mirage, you can visit the following link. Mirage possibilities. When the mirage explanation was put forth for the sighting, Captain Howard has this to say. At 19,000 feet, a mirage of what? Our own aircraft? No. That would be a reflected shadow. The shadow must fall on something to be visible, and there was nothing. The light from the setting sun could not possibly throw a shadow toward itself. He went on to say, it must have been some weird form of spaceship from another world. Both quotations courtesy of bluebookarchives.org. Official conclusions. This case is listed as unexplained in the Condon Report, pages 139-40,173,961. Although the committee's physicist Gordon Thayer said it was almost certainly a natural phenomenon, which is so rare that it apparently has never been reported before or since. This case is listed as unknown in the Blue Book Unknowns.
Yep.
The mod have not given an explanation either.
That sounds like a Mick West quote, that one.
Stop it there.
Nicap.org.
Yeah. Got greasy fingers.
No,
and cheesy fingers.
That's it's such an interesting statement in itself, isn't it? You know, it was almost certainly a natural phenomenon, which is so rare, but apparently has never been reported before or since. What the hell kind of statement is that?
That sounds like something someone would say to Mick West. And a seagull.
Yeah, I mean, well, at least it came out with an explanation of a seagull. But the more you analyse that statement, almost certainly a natural phenomenon, which is so rare that apparently has never been reported before or since. Eh? Oh dear. I mean, it's embarrassing, really, to be honest. There we go. But it's gone down as an unknown. But of course, there's that little counterpunch there from Thayer, you know. So he's leaving that element of doubt, isn't he? So that's pretty much for these two cases. But yeah.
Have we gone out of sequence here on cases? What was the list that we had?
No, with
Let me see if I can look it up. On G's high at the moment.
yeah, as we can hear.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's the next best thing to pizza, I guess. So your list was jet intercept over Bentwaters, then Condon Committee exposed, the B29 UFO incident over Gulf of Mexico. Did we do that one?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear Gulf of Mexico mentioned. The BOAC Stratocruiser. That's all you got on the list.
That's it.
And we've completed today's show. Surely not.
Well, no. I've always got more, you know.
So that's only 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do some more.
Well, you got 7 people watching. I'm not sure where number 8 disappeared to.
Well, I'll wait till you finished eating there. It's kind of a little off-putting.
Well, I'll mute it, shall I? As long as it's reading, I don't have to talk.
No, I don't. Just mute it and let me talk for a bit if you like. Then.
Okay.
Okay. So, gonna have a look at the Tunguska incident. My God, this has been this has kind of been there's so many explanations for this. It kind of reminds me of that incident that happened in Russia, the Outlaw Pass. There's been like 101 different theories put forward to that one. Oh, and by the way, with the Outlaw Pass, the Russian government, that is, done a new inquiry into it. And they've come to the conclusion it was, wait for it, the drum roll, hypothermia. Now, can someone tell me how that explains all the injuries? People found halfway up a tree.
That's
people
terrible.
with massive internal injuries.
Yeah, we covered that pretty in depth on a live stream, one of our earlier ones.
Yeah, we did. And it's kind of it's crazy how they've come to this conclusion, but this is the Russian government, of course, so I wasn't.
Yeah,
a lot of people were holding it.
We found out that
just when I thought I had 5 minutes to talk for myself, the comeback kid is here with his mouth full.
There were some documents they covered up. The government did. There was like a timeline problem. Just recapping what we talked about. I think it was a live stream about 10 or something like that. Go and check it out. I'll find a link for it and post it. Yeah, you can carry on talking. I just the hypothermia thing we ruled out straight away, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the more ridiculous explanations. Of course, a lot of people said Bigfoot, the Yeti. A lot of people said a military exercise. Because there was radiation found well above background levels. And of course, some of those injuries were absolutely horrendous. I mean, one of them had the tongue removed, and apparently it wasn't torn out. It was like surgically removed. Kind of reminds you of cattle mutilations, and And even human mutilations, which we did touch on in another episode, which researcher called Butch Wachowski, he's an ex-police officer, Canadian. He touched upon that. Well, he more than touched upon it. He was quite brutal in his opinions. So no, I think that's more the most least likely thing to have happened. Hypothermia, no, it just doesn't explain it. And why on earth would people run naked from their tents? Cut a hole in a tent? Why would they cut a hole in a tent? It's quite obvious they were scared to hell by something. And then, of course, there was the lights they photographed because they came out, a little bit out of focus and what have you. So it shows that something was in the air, and it was quite significant that something was in the air. And to them, it must have been significant because they got the camera out and photographed it. And they were like orange blobs of light, the way it came out. So it was quite inconclusive. There wasn't much you could do with the photos. But going down to Tunguska, this is another case where there's been 101 explanations. The meteor one, or the comet one, doesn't seem to gel because there's no impact site, there's no crater. Others have said that it could have exploded above ground, and others have said that it shows all the signs of nuclear explosion. 80 million trees flattened. 80 million. Whatever happened there, if it happened over a populated area, then geez. Imagine that happening in New York today. Talking millions of people. Maybe 30, 50 million dead. Because this was in 1908, and a lot of people pointed the finger towards Tesla, because he was doing some crazy stuff at the time. But I don't think there was any kind of energy weapon that could have caused this. And then, of course, there's the witness statements with Tunguska, that they saw the object quite clearly for quite a long period of time, and it was changing course. That reveals a meteor or comet out. And they saw it over several minutes as well, which makes it even more unlikely. There were some people remarkably, apparently didn't kill anyone directly, although some people died of injuries afterwards. But was it a UFO event? I don't know. I just don't know. But because we're a UFO channel, we're going to look at that possibility at least. There's nothing else really seems to fit. And it's also quite funny. You think about it, if something was it knew it was coming down. It's just like a pilot would do, a human pilot today. If he knew his aircraft was going to go down, he's going to try and make sure it comes down in an area where it's going to do the least damage. And of course, they couldn't have picked a better area than Siberia. So, does that show some intelligent control at the last second, or is it just me overthinking it? And it just happened to come luckily down where it did. So, I suppose, Paul, need to read the text out. Oh, that's if I've given you the link, which would probably help. As we go. Oh, I see we got Richie Giordano from Goophon joining us. What he has to say on this.
Okay, I've unmuted myself for the time being, but Yeah, there's a link
Okay.
to the great episode we did a long time ago now.
Oh, did you find it?
9 months ago, yeah. Once I learned out how to spell it again. But anyway, the link's on the side now. If you haven't watched that one, go and watch it. That was a really good. That was a really good one, and you got a link for us to go.
Yeah, I sure have.
What's Richard trying to post? A link to a story about what we're doing, or which is probably okay, but unless you've got a spanner, you can't actually post links, so it doesn't work too well anyway.
Since your moderators don't understand what the link is for.
Well, you got to tell them what the link is for before you post it.
I don't know, he's probably trying to cause trouble as usual. Yeah, oh well.
Yeah, unless you got a spanner, you can't post links anyway. So here we go. I'll start it from the top here. Yeah, normally you have to join Discord group, post the links there for a moderator to repost it if they think it. Oh, why is it not scrolling anymore? Won't scroll anymore. Then to that. Oh, wait, that will do. We'll go from there.
When we think of cataclysmic events, most of us will think of an event long ago in the distant past. One that perhaps shaped the world that we know today. Or some of us might think of a disastrous end-of-the-world type of scenario still to come. Perhaps in our lifetime. Hopefully not. The fact is, however, as little as slightly over a century ago, an event in the uppermost regions of Tunguska is considered by many to be as close as we in the modern world have come to witnessing such an event. Had what many believe to be a comet or meteorite exploded a little more west and south of its location, or had it occurred just several hours later, the blast would likely have occurred near or directly over Moscow, for example. Needless to say, the loss of life would have likely been in the millions. As it happens, there are no known recorded deaths as a direct result of the incident. Of course, whether any further-reaching deaths occurred in later months and years is perhaps open to debate. As it would seem, is whether it was a meteor at all. Although that is the generally accepted theory, there is no solid inescapable truth to the claims. Several researchers over the decades have quietly suggested that the explosion over Tunguska was not a meteor, but of something more nuts and bolts. Possibly an alien craft. One that hadn't purposely ventured to Earth, but was in distress and ultimately exploded several miles up in the atmosphere before it could land. Or, according to some even more outlandish theories, an ancient alien defense weapon that intentionally crippled an approaching vehicle. We will examine all of these, from the plausible to the bizarre. Just what did happen over Tunguska in 1908? Contents. The blast. 7 a.m., June 30th. Midnight light so brilliant one could read the minutest lettering. A strange underground. Initial. The idea. Beyond all doubt. The claims of Felix Ziegel. Crude accelerated development. Connections to the
you could
the
skip
strange
that
copper
table of
called
contents,
even the
Paul.
beasts, an advanced, the 2000, the claims of the Tunguska, a region, the Chelyabinsk, even if it were just the blast. 7 a.m., June 30th, Tunguska, 1908. Although there are no known victims of the explosion, that morning at a little after 7 a.m. on June 30th, 1908, those that lived nearest to the unpopulated area, the nearest being around 40 miles away, could not only hear the blast and see the bright glow immediately, they could feel the intense heat also. One such farmer, Sergei Semyonov, would claim that a huge ball of fire filled the sky. Furthermore, despite his distance, a shock wave from the blast knocked him clean off his feet. When he regained consciousness a short time later, he would recall that the heat in the air was so hot he had to immediately go inside. Even those who were hundreds of miles away could clearly see the pillar of fire in the skies, as well as the gusts of winds that were, in fact, the shock waves from the blast. Residents in these locations would even report their windows shaking and rattling, as if there was a powerful earthquake in progress. Seismic equipment as far away as the United Kingdom would register the impact. Just to demonstrate how powerful the blast was, perhaps we should consider the overall findings of the world's scientists of the time. They would conclude that shock waves from the impact had gone around the world twice before losing momentum. When investigators would finally manage to inspect the damage, they would find that over 770 square miles of thick forest trees had been flattened completely. Whatever the cause of the explosion was, theories, as we shall see, would suggest it occurred somewhere between 3 and 6 miles above the surface of the ground. It was the burst of air and energy that would cause the forest devastation, rather than a direct impact. Below is archive footage. Midnight light so brilliant one could read the minutest lettering. In the days that followed the events, the skies throughout Asia, Russia, and even as far away as Europe, remained aglow. Writing in the Quarterly Journal of the Royal Meteorological Society, in June 1934, F.J.W. Whipple would tell of reports from Sweden of the night in question in 1908, of the skies at night being almost as bright as the day. In fact, between June 30th until July 2nd very good photographs could be taken at midnight, such was the brightness. The report would further describe the nighttime cloud over these 3 nights as sometimes snow-white, sometimes golden. Another Swedish witness would state that the light was so brilliant one could read the minutest lettering within its glow. Further still, a Mr. W.C. Hart from Scotland also claimed to.
Yeah, Jesus, can you imagine if that kind of event happened in 2020 with the internet?
Mm.
You know, people must have been, oblivious to this in most places in the world. And by the time it did leak to them, it was all done and dusted.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course, I suppose if it happened today, it'd be investigated by many, many nations. It'd just be hard to keep it quiet, wouldn't it? And keep the investigation was. I don't think anyone got on the scene until years after,
So what the question is, what was causing all the extra light?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question.
Was the atmosphere ionized that it was actually emitting light?
Yeah.
Or was there a crashed object releasing light?
Well, nobody found anything as such. There was a couple of crazy witnesses. Oh God, I think one said a piece of it landed in a plant pot in a garden or something a bit silly like that. We might actually get to that bit.
Okay.
And yeah, it's being examined now. But no, I don't know. There's so many experts disagreeing on what actually happened.
Right.
We're none the wiser.
Also claimed to have captured a photograph of Dornoch Cathedral at midnight of July 2nd. That the event was unlike anything seen by the generation of the time was certainly obvious to most. The more details and witness statements that would emerge of the incident, the more it was increasingly likely that no generations since antiquity had witnessed such an event. One that was apparently narrowly cataclysmic. In a time before the internet, modern technology, or even satellite, and so consequently investigations, and the filtering of the results of those investigations to various locations around the world would take decades. Add to this the 2 world wars that obviously hindered any realistic investigations into the incident. And then, following the start of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the West for the majority of the second half of the 20th century, any information was almost always subject to paranoid scrutiny on both sides of the Iron Curtain. It is easy to see why areas of the incident remain murky. Awakened by whistling and strong winds. While the witness statements by Sergei Semyonov were key into understanding the ferocious atmosphere in the immediate aftermath of the incident, they are not the only ones. Nor indeed the earliest retrieved by investigators. For example, I.M. Suslov would detail the account of Chuchan of the nearby Shanyujar tribe. Chuchan would state that he and his brother were asleep in their hut along the river bank when a whistling and strong wind woke each of them at the same time. Each of them could feel a shove by an invisible hand, one so hard, Chuchan fell into the fire. They could hear chaotic noise from outside, and the two young boys became extremely scared and upset. They gathered their sleeping bags and prepared to leave their hut. Then, however, the thunder struck. This was the first thunder. Suddenly the earth began to move and rock, and a blast of wind so strong it completely knocked over their hut. Chuchan was pushed down, trapped, by sticks of the hut, but he was able to see what was happening. From above him trees were falling, the branches were on fire. The sky was so bright it was as if there was a second sun. Then, the second thunderclap came. Even though the morning was sunny, and there was no rain falling. While the two brothers struggled to free themselves of the remains of the ruined hut, they would continue to take in the bizarre events unfolding around them.
Doesn't it?
Evidence of several large explosions? After having already heard two distinct and loud thunderclaps, loud enough to scare the two boys and physically knock them down with the wind-like aftershock, a third such boom sounded through the skies above. Just before this third thunderclap, a flash was clearly visible overhead, this time in a different place to the first one. A moment following the thunder, another sudden blast of wind forced them from their feet and ripped up trees as if they were blades of grass.
Could it be a collision?
As they were still recovering, another flash appeared above, followed by another thunderclap, although not as loud as before.
Comets or
Chuchan claimed a fifth thunder strike would sound out shortly after, but this one was somewhere far away, where the sun goes to sleep. If Chuchan's account is genuine and accurate, then there is evidence of several different explosions taking place. Explosions that would each send powerful shockwaves out in all directions, despite there seemingly being a considerable distance away from the epicenter of the blast.
Cover up.
While this could most certainly match a meteorite, certainly one exploding in midair, it all of a sudden opens the door to other, perhaps more outlandish, but no less intriguing, and even relevant theories. The bright bluish-white heavenly body over Karolinsky 2 weeks earlier. On the morning of the June 17, 1908, almost 2 weeks before the Tunguska event, according to several local newspaper reports from July of that year, strange activity was recorded near the region. According to peasants in the village of Karolinsky, a bright bluish-white heavenly body, so bright it was impossible to look at, descended downwards from above. They would describe the object as the shape of a pipe or a cigar. It was visible for around 10 minutes before it suddenly turned into strange black smoke. At roughly the same time a knocking sound was heard, similar to military fire. Following this relative peaceful display, the ground and buildings suddenly shook, and strange flames and shapes appeared in the sky. Perhaps interestingly, the author of the report would state on the night in question, they too heard sounds akin to an artillery barrage. What's more, there were at least 10 of these rounds, and they appeared to have regularly timed intervals. Such details would not suggest a natural phenomenon. What does this suggest, then? Surely something more than a natural cosmic incident? Or might the rattle of gunfire have been a top-secret response to a meteorite? If so, it would suggest technology far ahead of what the Times says was available. And it is surely unlikely that such a technology would have been in Soviet, or any country's, hands at that point in time.
Tesla was doing, though.
What's more, there were corroborating sightings from another nearby village.
Yeah, that's
strange underground
more
rattles in between artillery fire like dozens of trains. Another newspaper report around the same time featured a strange sighting in the village of Kazemsko on the same date and time. A sudden and strange wind disturbed the residents of the village at a little before 7:45 a.m. As soon as the wind came through, a thump was heard which was followed by shaking of the buildings, as though they were hit by a large log or heavy rock. What is interesting here is that descriptions of the event were similar to those given by Chuchan about the Tunguska event 2 weeks later. Residents would report that there were several thumps each followed by a strong wind. However, by far the strangest detail of the events of the June 17th were reports of strange underground rattles in between the thumping noises. Furthermore, these sounds were described as like a railway upon which dozens of trains are traveling at the same time. Even more eyebrow-raising are the claims that following these rattles was the distinct noise of artillery fire. Each round separated by equal intervals, just like the descriptions
UFO
given by
underground
those near the
base.
village of Karalinksi. After several minutes, the noise and wind ceased. However, in the sky towards the north, a large gray-black cloud hovered in the otherwise clear sky. By around 3 p.m. that afternoon, the cloud finally began to disperse.
That sound of the train noises is exactly what it sounded like during the big quake we had in Christchurch here. So I could understand that they think there might be trains under the ground, but it did sound like a freight train was running straight through the bedroom here during the big quake. It's unusual sound, and the whole house is wobbling up and down. So yeah, could it have been that the explosion caused an earthquake? More than likely. Especially if it hits into the ground, right? It's going to trigger something to happen. But it was an overhead explosion, they said. But I still think it would have created it would have created enough impact in the ground to trigger an earthquake after, I reckon, as well.
Well, what you'd have thought, Paul, is that multiple pieces would have, it would have left multiple craters if something like that exploded above ground. All those pieces have to land somewhere, don't they?
They would have had fragments spread out.
Yeah, exactly. At least.
But there might only be like little fragments. It wouldn't be like car-sized blocks, I don't think.
Yeah, well, apparently there was fragments found that were buried in trees and they were taken away for analysis and never seen again.
Yeah.
That's typical of conspiracy stuff, isn't it? I mean, we don't know. There's just no evidence to go on with that.
What's the locally theories that sort of fit? It could have been Tesla doing his ionized atmosphere experiment that went wrong. Somehow.
I think that's totally outlandish. I honestly don't believe that. I had a closer look to that, and
would that explain?
Work out.
No, would that explain why it was extra light? Would be what Tesla was mucking around with, but the explosion, I don't know, unless there was multiple events that happened at the same time, which could count for that, I guess. So you always remember that it may have been not one event, but multiple events. So it could have been a Tesla doing an experiment, ionizing the air, and then at the same time a big meteorite come down, exploded, because it heated up, and because as it heated up, the gas expanded, and then ignited, and then it caused the earthquake. So 3 events happened all at the same time.
A
ripple-on effect.
It's not just that. You remember now that they took all Tesla's papers away. Well, the day he died, apparently. So all his work was there, documented. It was in government hands, wasn't it? So anything that he created that was that devastating should have been freely available in the Second World War. And of course, this explosion at Tunguska was far more devastating than both the atom bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki put together.
Yep.
So that makes the Tesla thing a real stretch for me, anyway.
But you rather believe it was a UFO craft coming down that exploded?
No. I don't think it was.
Or 2 UFOs fighting?
I don't know. I wouldn't rather believe anything, Paul. I'd just like to know what actually happened.
As if you're going to find out what happened.
I think a UFO event is unlikely, but not impossible. I think the Tesla thing is even more unlikely than a UFO event.
Well, it could have been the Russians shooting down another ship.
It still has to go down as a UFO event because we can't explain what it was. It's unidentified anyway.
Maybe there was like a incident happened in space, and then the UFO come crashing down. So yeah, who knows? Because the government are really good at covering up, especially stuff they weren't meant to be doing in space, right?
Yeah.
But this is going back to the 1900s, so there shouldn't have been anything in space, right?
Well,
Was it? What was the
1908,
year?
there wasn't anything. There certainly wasn't anything in
No.
space, for God's sake, man. Geez, we're still struggling to
But
get
they could have
anything in
been,
the air, let alone in space.
but it could have been high altitude missile system, and they fired it at a mothership or something like that. Though
The missile system in 1908, Paul. There was no missiles in 1908.
Well,
You're looking at Condon. First missile really was the Doodlebug, the V1 and the V2, which came in the 40s. There was no missile technology before then.
Well, so we know anyway. But
oh, come on! Don't you think if the Russians had had something like that, they'd have used it?
Well,
or anybody else?
Maybe it went wrong, and that's why they didn't bother experimenting with it again. Who knows?
Oh, nah. It's only a dumb old chemical firework at the end of the day. Rocket is. It's not going to do that much damage. It might. Excuse me.
But when you think about it, the non-lethal nuclear blasts that they were working from orbiting space platforms, where they dropped round spheres of depleted uranium, would actually impact a city and destroy it all like a nuclear blast, but wouldn't have the radiation. And that was what was proposed by the Reagan Star Wars initiative as one of the weapons.
Yeah.
So
but anything that they had then, any kind of budding technology they had, it's just ridiculous, Paul. 1908 rocket technology, nuclear blast, no, it's just that's out the equation. It's either something natural, or it's something. Or it's someone else's technology.
Something natural or something alien?
Well, it could be either, but I think it's much more likely that it was a meteorite or comet that exploded above ground.
It sounds like it was two in that case, like a big one, then it had a little one that was
trailing. I know. Even that doesn't fit like it should,
No. But that's sort of. We saw a similar event happen in Russia again a couple of years ago, wasn't it? And that shattered all the windows in the city. But it didn't. Yeah. It wasn't like big like the other one. So maybe that was like a leftover from the 1901 when that went past Earth and didn't actually crash like the other two did. It's very possible. You're talking about almost another. What was it, 80 years? So, probably longer than that.
The upfront cost of solar panels has fallen.
Hey, what's that? It's about solar panels.
Yeah, it's okay. My chat's frozen.
Alright, Susan's back. Woof woof. Hey, we better carry on.
Disperse. We will return to the notion of some kind of armed response a little later. If the theories that prompt that return are even partially true, it could make the incidents of June 17, 1908, 13 days before the Tunguska Incident, quietly important. Initial expeditions of Leonid Kulik to the Tunguska region. The ruin left behind following the incident was beyond extensive. Many trees were flattening. Others snapped as if they were nothing more than matchsticks. Huge chunks of earth had been thrown upwards and scattered far and wide. For a report for the Soviet Academy of Science in 1928, Leonid Kulik would write, "The whole area bears evidence of an immense catastrophe." Kulik would lead the first expedition to the area in 1921, over a decade after the incident. Nevertheless, it is from his investigations that a great many of the witness testimonies come from. During his first trip to the Tunguska River region, he began to formulate his theories that a meteorite impact was the cause of the explosion. He would eventually succeed in persuading the Soviet authorities to fund a more extensive expedition. He claimed that he would likely discover meteoric iron, something that could aid Soviet industry immensely. Whether his claims were genuine or not, he received his desired funding. Beginning in 1927, and lasting for almost 10 years, he would conduct extensive research on the incident and the area. It was much to his surprise, then, that despite this extensive coverage of the terrain, he could find no crater or physical signs of an actual impact. He eventually had to concede that no evidence presents itself of a meteorite impact with the Earth. As we will see, it is largely from these findings that the widely accepted theories, still today, that a meteorite or comet entered the planet's atmosphere that day in June 1908, but rather than impact the ground had, in fact, exploded several miles above the Earth's surface.
We're not far away now, anyway.
The ideas of Alexander Kazantsev, more facts hiding as fiction. The leading, and consequently, leading theory was that a meteorite, or some other kind of cosmic body, had invaded the Earth's airspace and subsequently exploded several miles above the planet's surface. The energy released from this explosion would result in the devastation to a massive area of the Siberian forests. However, at the end of the Second World War, as the Americans dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, one particular writer instantly made comparisons of the aftermath in those flattened ruins of Japan and the chaos left behind in Tunguska. Alexander Kazantsev would investigate the ruins of the two devastated Japanese cities. And he would become more and more convinced that what had happened over Tunguska was not a meteorite, but a nuclear explosion. When he learned that radiation levels were at increased levels for miles and miles around the region, he further believed his speculation was correct. Kazantsev would further theorize that due to the location being so isolated that the blast was not the result of an intentional nuclear attack. He would ultimately suggest that the Tunguska incident was the result of a nuts and bolts spacecraft, using nuclear energy as a means of propulsion, attempting to make an emergency landing, but exploding in midair before reaching the ground. What we should note here is that Kazantsev would put his theory into a fictional story, rather than write it as a possible scenario for the Tunguska incident. Since then, his ideas, fictional or otherwise, have taken on a life of their own. Many, including Kazantsev according to some, believed he would face strict opposition to his ideas, and so hid them within a fictional story. Whether he was hiding fact as fiction is open to debate. Beyond all doubt, Tunguska was a nuclear explosion. Many other researchers would follow up on Kazantsev's ideas with a more serious frame of mind. For example, as the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were researched following their absolute and total destruction, it was noted how the size of the Tunguska devastation was, roughly, 30 times that of either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Given that we know the deadly amount of payload in each of those bombs, it would make many question whether the Tunguska episode was really just a meteorite. One that exploded above the ground, no less, very similar to the science behind the strikes on the unfortunate and ultimately devastated Japanese cities. In 1966, for example, following a long and in-depth investigation, Russian scientists V.K. Zurevlev, D.V. Demon, and L.N. Demina would all conclude, beyond any reasonable doubt according to their findings, that the incident over Tunguska in June 1908 was most definitely a nuclear explosion. Furthermore, they weren't on their own in their seemingly off-the-mark conclusions. At around the same time as the Zurevlev, Demon, Demina investigation and ultimate findings, and Russian professor and a Russian geologist were undertaking their own research. What's more, although many are dubious, at best, of their findings and investigation, their argument is intriguing at the very least. The claims of Felix Zeigel and Alexei Zolotov. Professor Felix Zeigel and geologist Alexei Zolotov would venture out to the apparent blast zone. What's more, their research this area was more or less in the shape of an oval. Furthermore, Zolotov would discover a strange metallic presence in the soil within this blast zone. Ultimately, this would lead Zolotov to suggest that the explosive material was encased inside a non-explosive shell when it exploded. That was, he would argue, because the material was of a nuclear type, and was likely the propulsion system of what was an alien spacecraft. Even more intriguing, Ziegel would speak to several surviving witnesses. Some of these would state their clear recollections of a fireball changing direction several times on the morning of the explosion. If such claims are accurate, it certainly isn't the behavior of a comet or a meteorite. Interestingly or not, Ziegel would also obtain a report from the Tatranska Observatory in Poland. It would state that in the early hours of June 30, 1908, only an hour or two before the Tunguska incident, they would track a fireball falling from the sky. However, rather than merely fall to the ground or burning up, this strange anomaly would change direction on several occasions. Ziegel and Zolotov would also point to the state of the trees in the area, particularly those in the perceived epicenter of the blast. They would note how only the side of the tree that faces inwards, or towards the apparent blast zone, had burn or scorch marks. This is consistent with a sudden and intense surge of heat.
Stop it there,
This
Paul.
is exactly what happens in a nuclear-type explosion.
Yeah, you know, God, I spent a lot of time looking for the actual witness testimonies of the people who were alive during that day, you know, and nobody went on the record saying as such, you know. We just got the word of the people who were investigating it and who interviewed those people, and we don't know if they're twisting the words of the witnesses and what have you, which people often do in their cause. So, I mean, I don't know. We're not going to find anyone alive that was alive then, are we? So I think it's a lost case. But it's a curious one, nevertheless, and I don't know if science can maybe explain it a little more in the future. I think that's the only hope we can cling on to now. I don't know. It's another Dyatlov pass, isn't it? We'll probably never get the answers, but it's I mean, there's more evidence here than there certainly was in Dyatlov Pass, if you like, because I mean, Jesus, what was it? 80 million trees flattened. It's one hell of an impact. Well, it wasn't even an impact, was it? It's one hell of an explosion. You know, the way those trees were flattened as well. You know, they were flattened like they were matchsticks. You know, God only help us if that same thing happened today and it was in a more populated area. But well, I think everyone knows that. It goes without saying. And it's only 112 years ago. Could happen again, couldn't it? But yeah, as for the extraterrestrial ET vehicle, it's been directed towards blah 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 when it exploded. I don't know. I don't know. It's too much speculation for me. Yeah. Well, may as well finish off with it, I suppose.
Explosion. Ultimately, their conclusion was that an artificial construction, likely an extraterrestrial vehicle, was being directed towards a landing when it exploded. Crude experimentation with nuclear-type weapons? We will return to the apparent mysterious detail of underground rattles and artillery fire in a moment. One of the theories as to just what this might have been, while possibly unlikely, is mind-bendingly fascinating. We have examined before the idea that nuclear and advanced weapons existed in the distant past. In fact, the evidence to support such claims is in more abundance than most mainstream historians would have us believe. However, in contemporary times, history tells us such weapons were not available until the 1940s. Maybe we should remember the words of Robert Oppenheimer, the so-called father of the atom bomb, who, when asked if a recent test at the Alamogordo base was, in fact, the first nuclear blast, would reply yes. In modern times, what Oppenheimer was clearly saying was such predetermined blasts had taken place in antiquity. Many ancient Sanskrit
An
writing,
odd one,
for
isn't it?
example, speak of such blasts, whose descriptions almost identically match the aftermath of nuclear blasts of the 20th century. Many of these texts were discovered, relatively speaking, in
You
same
have
region
debunked all
East
that
region
though,
of the
mate.
world. While we know the Nazis had a particular interest in these
Hmm.
ancient writings, even sending teams to recover
Turned
them
out
in
to
the
be
years
a
leading
complete
up to the
fake,
Second World War, perhaps the
the what they call it, the Armadas, and the nuclear blast at war that meant to happen in India was fabricated by someone. Was fabricated by someone in 1905, I think it was. The Indians did research and tried to track down the origin of the story, and they can't get it going past 1905. And the guy wrote the script as a story, but I did a live stream on that one, so yeah, you can't trust what they're saying here. But anyway, we carry on.
Perhaps the Russians or another mysterious group of rich investors made earlier discoveries. Accelerated development? Or access to ancient knowledge? Might it be, however unlikely and speculative as the idea is, that the incidents leading up to Tunguska, and even Tunguska itself, was a secret and crude experiment with early nuclear-style weapons? What else could artillery fire and regular intervals be, but the purposeful discharge of weaponry? And if so, were these theoretical events just weapons testing? Or might there have been a legitimate target to aim for? Might there indeed have been some kind of unidentified aerial presence over the skies of Siberia in the weeks leading up to the Tunguska incident? And might this presence have been met with such brutal and, to the vast majority of the world's population, weapons unknown to them? Even if this admittedly unlikely scenario was accurate, where did the knowledge, and even the need for such weapons, in 1908 stem from? Perhaps, as we will look at in a moment, the military, or whoever might have been utilizing such potential nuclear weaponry, didn't develop it of their own accord. Or discover ancient knowledge and instructions on how to do so.
Well, the Germans didn't use it, that's for
Perhaps
sure.
they discovered the physical remains of ancient and long-lost weapons.
No.
It is certainly possible that such a discovery took place deep in the forests of Siberia. A discovery that many
And the
tradespeople
Russians
and
didn't have
nomadic
it because
tribes
they
had
didn't use
known
it
about
against the
for hundreds of
Germans who were
years,
trying to invade them.
And they
and
would.
one from a region with a long
And they
history
would,
of
yeah.
mysterious activity and
Because it would have
encounters.
saved a lot of their lives.
Connections to the ominous Valley of Death legends? In the surrounding areas of northwestern Yakutia in Siberia near the Tunguska region, is an ominous stretch of land by the name of Yuliuyui Churchek. Or, when translated, the Valley of Death. What's more, this dark region has a long history of equally dark legends stretching back almost 1,000 years. In fact, so entrenched in the local population are the legends of the Valley of Death, that they rarely venture there. And don't advise the various visitors they get each year that they should either. According to these legends, the dense forest region was home to an intense battle between two powerful enemies. These most remarkable events go back to around the late 13th or early 14th century. One of the attacks would come from above, from the air, while the other would hurl balls of fire from the ground. This is a remarkable detail. Is it some kind allegory for a meteor strike around the early
Sounds like a
1300s?
fabricated story to me.
There is little geological evidence of such a strike. Or should we take the legend more directly? Is it describing an advanced aerial attack on a facility somewhere on the ground, which then responded with equally advanced weaponry which sound similar to artillery fire? Remember, the claims around the sightings several weeks before the Tunguska incident mentioned exactly this type of sound. They also mentioned an underground rattle. When we further examine some of the remains of the area, these claims also begin, theoretically, to make more sense. The strange copper cauldrons of one of the most dire regions of the world. While the legends have seemingly been around, orally at least, for around 800 years, an expedition from the mid-1850s provides us with some of the most intriguing finds of the area. The explorer, known only as R. Mach, would discover gigantic cauldrons made of copper. However, only the rim was visible above the ground. The rest, it would seem, was deep below the earth. The area itself runs from Bodebo to Anibar, and right the way through to the Laptev Sea. According to histories of ancient times of the area, it was once part of a nomadic trading route. In fact, right up until 1936 there is an account of a trader along this route, Savinov, and his granddaughter, Zina. One night on their way home, they found one of these reddish-arched buildings, and with night drawing in, decided to stay the night. Savinov, who had stayed in these strange buildings in similar situations before, led Zina beyond a spiral passageway, and into a metal chamber. He told her that even in the harshest frosts it was as warm as summer in the chambers. There are several more local legends dating back to the 1930s of both legal and illegal traders of various produce and items in this sparsely populated area.
Big copper drums
Most revolve around
for
such
cooking
traders
stuff.
stumbling across these mystery dome-like structures and, given the brutal winter conditions at certain times of year, using them as a temporary shelter. However, many of them would soon become intensely ill with nausea and dizziness. So much so, it was often preferable to go back out into the elements rather
Mercury?
than sit within these menacing cauldrons.
Could be
Even the
gold
beasts
processing.
do not go there. As the legends of the ill-health-inducing cursed copper houses of the deep forests of Siberia took on more and more momentum, many serious-minded, but equally intrigued scientists, explorers, and geologists would set out to discover and ultimately rationalize these mysterious structures for themselves. Indeed, to such serious and trained minds, these cauldrons were simply a mix of unknown history and local folklore of the bootlegging world of the black market and the discreet trading routes they coveted for themselves. In 1936, one such geologist would venture into the wilderness of the Valley of Death to do just that. He would take with him an elderly and wise native of the area. Along the Algudac River, he and the elder would discover just such a structure. Incidentally, according to some researchers, the word Algudac translates to place with a cauldron. The unnamed geologist would describe the ruined remains in his report as a smooth metal hemisphere, reddish in color. Furthermore, the edges of this structure were so sharp and precise that you could cut a fingernail on them. Even more remarkable, these dome-like remains, despite at least half of their structures having sunk underground, had such a large entry into them that a person could ride a reindeer under it. Indeed, a sketch from the expedition shows one of the team doing just that. You can view the sketch above. It is an accurate representation of how these cauldrons would have looked while still visible and above the ground. They would stay one night in this apparent ancient ruin. However, they were more than familiar with the tales of traders dying suddenly if they stayed too long. Local legend tells all even the beasts do not go there. An advanced defensive alien battle station? And one that is still active? So, what is the connection between these mysterious structures in the forests of Siberia? Named rather ominously the Valley of Death, to boot. According to some claims, particularly the local battle legends, these structures are ancient defensive weapons against aerial invaders. And what's more, these still active weapons came into action on the morning of June 30th, 1908, most likely through nothing more than predetermined programming to do so, and turned its attention to whatever came hurtling out of the skies over Tunguska. It is a bizarre and truly outlandish theory, no doubt. But might there be more truth to the notion that an ancient, yet highly advanced surface-to-air laser-type defense weapon exists deep in the uninhabitable area of Siberia?
We can't even
A weapon that might have somehow played a part in the still mysterious events over Tunguska over 100 years ago? While such speculation will undoubtedly be dismissed without even the slightest glance by most, there is more weight to it than mere fantasy. Even if it ultimately does turn out to be incorrect. For example, are these cauldrons responsible for the balls of fire of the legendary battle that took place here hundreds of years ago? If so, who are these different sides? Are they both aliens, or might one be a human settlement, albeit with technology far in advance of what history says they should have had? Does this also explain the apparent rife levels of radiation in the area? Are they so high due to the presence of such powerful weapons? Perhaps above all else, are the remains of these cauldrons still visible today? Before we delve into that, though, check out the video below.
Oh, no.
It looks at these suggestions advanced ancient weapons a little further.
I don't think so.
No,
The
it's rubbish.
2013 Visic expedition. Michael Visick had a long fascination with the legends of the Valley of Death. And what's more, his initial research in 2013 had identified several strange circular patches in the otherwise grim terrain. To obtain an even better view of the area, his team would arrive at the destination using specifically designed parachute copters. As they drifted over the area, they could target their landings precisely, as well as gain a literal bird's-eye view of the land below.
Parachute copters.
There were indeed several circular areas that looked very promising. They would take their parachute copters down to the marshy land and begin investigating. It wasn't long before they would locate a metallic anomaly just a little below the thick swampy waters.
Of course, so you get that
They
from
had been in
meteorite
the area
too.
for several hours by the time of this
Yeah.
apparent breakthrough
It's all
discovery.
too little, too late, isn't
The
it?
task now was to investigate the object more close-up and confirm if it was indeed one of the legendary copper cauldrons. However, within hours of this discovery, BOAC would become suddenly violently ill. He would suffer from extreme nausea and dizziness.
It just sounded like
Although he wished to
radon
stay,
gas.
the weather was also threatening to take a turn for the worse.
Mm.
They would ultimately decide to vacate the area, with a view to returning in the near future. Incidentally, BOAC would receive an immediate medical checkup upon returning from the expedition.
Radiation.
Bizarrely, the doctors could find absolutely nothing wrong with him. He would make a full recovery within hours of leaving the marshy swamplands of the Valley of Death. That he would suffer from the exact same symptoms as the
There's also
legends
another
assured him
gas
is
swamp
surely
give
more than
off.
mere coincidence. The short
was it?
video below looks
Sulfur
at BOAC's
something
excursion
rather.
a little further.
Yeah,
The
it would be
claims of the
sulfur, yeah.
Tunguska Space Phenomenon Foundation.
No, it's meant to be a odorless gas, but it's meant to be can actually kill you if you breathe too much of it. And it was on one of those ghost hunting shows at the Dole Island, and they was doing investigation on how much gas was given off around the island that was making people hallucinate and feel nausea. I can't remember what the gas was called now. It had a long name, but anyway. Now you get it around these swampy type terrain where you get a lot of debris into the water.
Foundation and Yuri Lavbin. Throughout the 2000s, several theories surfaced, allegedly with new evidence as to what happened at Tunguska almost a century earlier. Two particular claims stand out a little more than most of this era. The first, in 2004, would come following an expedition by the Tunguska Space Phenomenon Foundation. They would claim to have uncovered blocks of an extraterrestrial technical device from the Tunguska region.
Really?
They would present a small piece of this for analysis at a laboratory in Krasnoyarsk. The claims made in 2004 would cause a small ripple in the UFO community.
You mean George
Claims
Knapp didn't
5
get a
years
copy?
later by researcher
Sample?
Yuri Lavbin, however, were a little more explosive. He would ultimately claim in 2009, following his own expedition to the area, that a UFO had intentionally collided with an approaching meteor in order to literally protect our planet from devastation.
A third
Needless
theory.
to say, many would reject his claims in their entirety. To support his claims, he would produce 10 quartz crystals from the crash site. Furthermore, several of these crystals have strange and precise holes in them, so they might be linked. Even stranger, strange drawings are present on several of them. Lavbin would claim that we don't have any technologies that print
Sounds
such
like
kind of
elaborate
drawings
hoax
on
to me.
crystals. Using the most sophisticated laser machine available, engineers would attempt to replicate the drawings and symbols. However,
V-pulp.
despite the laser being able to cut through metal, it would barely make a mark on the crystals. Stranger still, and perhaps most intriguing, were the claims of finding ferrum silicate, something only found in space. Lavbin believes these strange quartz crystals.
That reminds me like of the Roswell stones where they said, no man could have done it. And turns out that someone was making those in Solomon Marketplace at conferences in Roswell. And obviously one of the terrorists dropped the stone and ended up in Linda Moulton Howe's hands. And and they got some craftsman to cut on it by hand and with some
These
tools.
kind of claims, they never stand up, do they?
No,
Never.
because they did it totally wrong, you see. They did it really there on the spots, and he carved it out and it looked pretty good by the eye, but under microscope it was obviously not going to be perfect, opposed to getting a machine that's controlled by a computer to cut them out, you know. It's going to be precise, you know, with sandblaster and everything. Yeah. So yeah, the crystals being mysterious here, though. There's no reason why they couldn't have collected samples from meteorite that they found on the ground and simply cut them. The same with the Roswell stone. It could be just like a piece of meteorite fragment that had a lot of iron in it that was magnetized, and of course that's why it could spin around. But a guy duplicated it in the episode I did, the Roswell stone, solved. And basically, you can get a lot of heavy iron rock type stuff, volcanic rock, and you can magnetize it, and then it'll spin around and all that sort of business. And you can sandblast it to any shape you want, and it's identical. So yeah, this one here talking about claims that it couldn't have been done by humans with laser. I think they're just looking at it the wrong way in this case. Someone will probably say, well, you don't use laser to cut that, you use another tool. Probably a diamond cutter or something, because they're talking about quartz here. Anyway.
Crystals were likely part of some advanced space map. This would make a certain amount of sense given what we now know of the memory storing capabilities of crystals. A region of meteor strikes and UFO activity. We shouldn't dismiss such claims of an alien craft exploding on Earth while attempting to make an emergency landing. We should also note, however, that several similar, if less devastating impacts have occurred in the region since, as well as Russia in general. And mid-air explosions of meteorites have occurred on several other occasions, albeit with less devastating consequences. For example, in February 1947, a large iron meteorite fell to Earth in the Scew Mountains. It is the largest such iron meteorite on record. In total, over 70 metric tons of iron surviving its entry into the atmosphere. Although it took place on the other side of the world over the Curuca River in Brazil, an incident in 1930 is thought to have been another case where a meteor, after exploding in midair, left no evidence of an impact crater at all. In fact, only through modern testing techniques was there confirmation of this event. Until then, it was merely the result of witness statements after the event. And even then, only because of the actions of a Franciscan monk, Fedele di Alviano. He would take it upon himself to travel to the region and investigate the claims for himself in 1931.
Why would a monk do that?
In short, this type of activity, certainly before the internet, could have happened often in remote parts of the world. Very likely more than we
What are you saying?
A lot of the monks at that time had an interest in science. I mean, if you look at the Roman Catholic Church now, they've got some damn big telescopes looking out in the Nevada region, haven't they?
Well, the church has got lots of money, that's for sure.
Exactly, yeah.
But they only seem to make the news when they're talking about pedos, not torpedoes.
Yeah, well, that's an unfortunate side, I'm afraid. But yeah, it is what it is. But the Vatican, actually, I think it was towards the end of the 20th century, kind of came out and said, oh, well, if there's aliens, don't worry about it. They're all God's creatures. And if they do come here, we'll baptize them. And it's kind of like they're getting ready for... that's honestly what one cardinal said on television. I'm not quite sure
I can't recall
whose show it was now. But yeah, but I think the Vatican are kind of getting ready for like a disclosure event, so they're survivors, so they're going to be well prepared, because they're going to kind of keep their. I mean, it's a huge religion, the Catholic religion, isn't it? They don't want to be taken by surprise with a bombshell like that there's actually visitors from another planet. So they're kind of plotting away just in case it happens. But of course they've always got their ear to the ground, and they know what's going on around the world. Trust me now that there'll be plenty of people out there watching, and plenty of Catholics out there now at the high level watching TTSA and Unidentified Series 2. I can assure you of that. I can assure you of that. And of course, there's now if you look at this Marco Rubio, the one that put the intelligence bill in. He's the senator for California, isn't it? Yeah, and he's a deeply religious Catholic.
Right.
So you kind of wondered who he's consulted with before he went through with this bill, because this has been the whole problem with UFO disclosure. There's a lot of people out there in the Senate and in all the relevant bodies of the U.S. government that think these things are demons and we should leave them well alone. It's nothing we can do about that, and it's a problem because you can't just ignore something that's in your airspace.
Well,
it's not a good idea.
baptizing things doesn't make them good people, even aliens. They still can go around killing. A lot of serial killers were Christians, Catholics. In fact, I think most of them were, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know. There's good and bad on both sides. The Protestant religion wasn't exactly squeaky clean by a long way, Paul. There was plenty of paedophiles among their ranks as well. It's just they were smaller and you heard about it less.
Yep. Pay for play. Yes. I wonder if more will come out on that, actually. It looks like my mouse has died. Sorry, I'm going to have to try and get a new battery. Oh, crap. Always goes at the wrong time, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll just get to the end of this anyway.
Yeah, hang on, I've got a new battery in. It's always a backup. Okay.
L to the region and investigate the claims for himself in 1931. In short, this type of activity, certainly before the internet, could have happened often in remote parts of the world. Very likely more than we think. And simply gone unreported and, in turn, unnoticed. However, in the modern age, these types of events will almost always be noticed. Just like an incident in February 2013 would prove. The Chelyabinsk Oblast Incident. In more recent times, in the Ural Mountain near the region of Chelyabinsk Oblast, an asteroid entered the Earth's atmosphere and was witnessed by hundreds of people screaming across the morning skies of February 15, 2013.
Yep.
The light from the object was even brighter than the rising sun, so much so that people over 60 miles away could see it clearly. Furthermore, particular for those in the region of Chelyabinsk Oblast, a feeling of intense heat would accompany the brilliant sighting. The object would ultimately explode around 18 miles above the Earth's surface. This explosion would result in an even brighter flash and a hot dust cloud with a radius of over 15 miles. The energy released was around 30 times that of the Hiroshima atomic explosion following World War II.
Yeah.
The shock waves from the explosion would result in injuries to over 1,500 people. Most of the injuries were the result of cuts from the broken glass of blown-in windows, which would shatter instantly. Just to get an appreciation of the damage of this otherwise minor incident, over 7,000 buildings across 6 cities would suffer significant damage as a result of the blast.
Now, if the aliens were really evil, they could destroy us within a day quite easily just by pushing a load of meteorites from the asteroid belt our way, that we got no way to stop them coming down and destroying all the planet. That would be the easiest way. And of course, it would kill. If they wanted to take us over, that would kill us all, but not have any radiation, right? So just send down all these meteorites, thousands of them, destroy the Earth, let it settle down for 100 years, and then you can start taking it over with no humans
Well,
around.
I don't know. Why spoil the fun?
Oh, yeah. We're really a reality TV show that's being...
great entertainment watching us.
Yeah, they're watching us on their Google boxes and their home planet. So we're reality TV Earth.
Blast. Maybe the most concerning thing was the detection of the object only came after it entered the Earth's atmosphere. Perhaps, though, we should also note the long history of apparent UFO sightings in pre-Soviet Russia, stretching back hundreds of years. There is no doubt that most meteorite incidents are exactly that, and nothing more. There is also a rich history of UFO activity in the less populated regions of northern Russia and the Siberia region. Before we move on, you check out footage of the Chelyabinsk incident below. Even if it were just a meteor. So, is there any credence to the claims and speculative theories that the incident over Tunguska in the summer of 1908 was really one of an extraterrestrial nuts and bolts craft? One that possibly destroyed an incoming meteor? Either with an advanced weapon, or simply by crashing into it, and taking the impact in place of the ground. Or might this nuts and bolts craft have been destroyed by an ancient advanced technology?
If anything, it could have been like the Kecksburg UFO. You know, they said it sort of was coming down like a meteorite and changed direction as well before it landed.
Yeah.
But maybe it didn't explode like the other one did. So maybe it's part of the same technology there.
Yeah, Kecksburg. Have we actually covered that one before? I don't think we have, you know.
I don't think we have, no.
No, we can do that next week, maybe. It's a good case, and doesn't matter if we come to different conclusions. Yeah, there's some interviews with the witness as well who was still alive then. Was it 1964, 1965, was it?
You're asking me. You're the historian.
Yeah. It was one of the two anyway.
Righto. Just carry on then. Finishes up here. We're over 3.5 hours.
Possibly extraterrestrial in nature, that has remained hidden in the region referred to as the Valley of Death? Maybe this visiting craft was here through circumstance? Themselves in a dire situation that would result in the accidental explosion of their craft several miles above the Earth? All of these are outlandish, of that there is no doubt. And while some are more so than others, the fact is that while the explanation of a meteor exploding above the surface of the Earth, rather than simply impacting it as we might expect it to, is perhaps the most reasonable, it remains just a theory. The fact is there is still so much uncertainty around the apparent sensible and reasonable explanation. And an equal amount of historic mystique around the entire region in general. This surely keeps these speculative theories just as relevant. The fact is, we'll likely never know what the events of June 30th, 1908 around 7:17 a.m. were. Let's say, for example, it was just a meteor. That in itself is a scary enough notion. And one that should make all of us sit up and think, this could happen again, at any moment.
That's right.
And without adequate warning. Whereas many are quick to criticize space research, perhaps it is an area we need to consistently fund? For reasons that most of us don't always see. Disclaimer.
All right.
The stories account.
But wasn't there also some strange story that they found, like micro springs and screws inside fossilized rock? I wasn't ever sure whether that was an elaborate hoax or what.
There was stuff like that, and it was supposed to be sent to a Russian lab and never seen again, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, maybe that's a good one to cover too. I'll bring up next week. What do you reckon?
Well, I don't know what case you're actually talking about. There's so many cases that have...
Well, there's...
Let's party!
Oh, battery's charged. I don't know if it was a particular case. I think it was some sort of stuff that came out on the web. keeps coming out on the web every couple of years about the screws.
There's a lot of bullshit keeps coming out on the web every couple of
Yeah,
years.
like a fossilized mobile phone, all that. You could see it was like elaborately hoaxed. A security team was putting it out, but there was one with the screws, Russian.
I mean, there's an MJ12 document that's back on the scene now, and Richard Doty's saying it's genuine.
He says everything's
really
genuine.
Sure. Well, I mean, no, he doesn't think everything's genuine, but he's obviously a disinformation guy. And people. The trouble is, people are falling for it all over again. It's just a big distraction.
Yeah,
and
so
I just don't know. I just don't know why people keep falling for the same old thing time and time again. It would do them good if they looked at the history of ufology from 1945, 1947 onwards, and you can see the amount of fake leaked documents that from Project Serpo, Project Aquarius, the MJ12 documents that have all been proved within an inch to be absolutely
that's quite
false.
interesting. I didn't know that. So they're saying this was the fossilized screw, but they said, could it be part of a fossilized sea creature? And they got some pictures of the fossilized creature with a spine that looks very much like a screw.
I mean, I don't know what aliens are doing with screws anyway, so yeah.
Well, the screw is actually a really clever device. Yeah. How did they screw their ships together? Rivets.
Well, has anyone ever seen them rivets on a if you look at the more genuine sightings, the craft's always seamless, Paul, like it's come out of a mold.
Yeah. Like they probably heat up a scene and it joins together. Probably.
I don't know. I haven't got a clue, mate. I haven't got a clue. I'm not going to even try and pretend that's just folly to do that. Dealing with something that we just don't understand, aren't we?
Yes, it's certainly an unusual story, but yeah, it's quite an interesting one to cover, I suppose. Is this 300 million year old screw or just a fossilized sea creature?
Well, you can do that in yours. I'm not covering that crap.
Oh, well, at least it gives a solution to it. Does kind of look like a fossilized one here. Whether it's got a segment top and bottom. So it's got a segment here.
So it's just going to end in tears, I think.
I just wonder what happened to the segment. Surely you could test it and see if it was fossilized. Like, is it actually rock that's been, suddenly, fossils and tree debris and all that turns into rock, and they call it sedimentary rock, right? That kind of looks like it is actually, doesn't it? All that mixture of rock, different stuff stuck together. But anyway, well, that's what come up in the search. I don't know if there was anything else. Was there also bearings or something? I can't remember. Maybe people out there can send us link on Discord. Maybe I can look at it, or Robert can. But I'll probably have to cover it because Robert's not too keen on this one. But that's it.
No. I'd rather go in nuts and bolts UFO cases,
Yeah, there's no one with a sea creature, but it looks very similar. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating though. False reports of 300 or 400 million. Yeah, it does look like it could be a sea creature. Yeah, that's the one I remember seeing. This one here. Proof of aliens. No, it's not.
Yeah, so it just looks like it just looks like a fossil to me. That's just unusually developed and maybe some kind of erosion has given that impression. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's on Daily Mail.
Oh, Daily Mail. Can you see now? I don't want to touch it.
I think this is just one of the stories that Tyler did on his Scew team at one stage.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing belongs to the lunatic fringe.
Yeah, I think it's one of these fossilized sea creatures that they're talking about. Oh, we got that thing again. Sod off you. See you later. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. That's I've heard the reports, but I never actually looked into it. There's another one that looks very similar. Another example. Yeah. That's not the same thing.
Well,
I don't think.
But there's nobody else taking it serious, as far as I know. Maybe it'll appear in the next version of Ancient Aliens and Mr. Giorgio with his mad hair.
I think it has already, hasn't it?
Say about it. Oh, good God! Well, it's hardly.
Right. This is the one that was more interesting. Nanostructures found in mountains. I think that's the other one I was thinking of. Let's see what they say on that one. See, that kind of looks like a man-made structure, but could nature duplicate it? Sure they could. Mother Nature is just amazing. So what are they saying about this one here being manufactured? Nanostructures found in Ural mountains are out of place in time. So what did they say about that one? Maybe we should read out a wee bit of this. We got a wee bit of time on the end, I suppose. Damn it. It's not scrolling right. Where's the reader? Why can't I see the reader? Oh, there it is. Put it down middle. What's it saying?
An OAPART, out-of-place artifact, is a term applied to dozens of prehistoric objects found in various places around the world that, given their level of technology, are completely at odds with their determined age based on physical, chemical, and/or geological evidence. OAPARTs often are frustrating to conventional scientists, and a delight to adventurous investigators and individuals interested in alternative scientific theories. In 1991, the appearance of extremely tiny, coil-shaped artifacts found near the banks of Russia's Kozym, Narada, and Balbanya rivers brought about a debate that has continued to this day. These mysterious and minuscule structures suggest that there may have been a culture capable of developing nanotechnology 300,000 years ago. These manufactured coils were initially discovered during geological research associated with the extraction of gold in the Ural Mountains. These pieces include coils, spirals, shafts, and other unidentified components.
Okay.
According to an analysis from the Russian Academy of Sciences in Syktyvkar, the largest pieces found are mostly copper, while the smallest are made of tungsten and molybdenum.
Which is kind of strange. Can't be fossils then. Yeah. Well, let's keep on reading what they're going to say here. Obviously, it hasn't been solved yet, this one. But, could ancient man have made such small things? Had some sort of ancient knowledge? Well, possible.
I think he would have needed
While the
an
largest of these objects
from
measure 1.18 inches, the smallest are only 1/10,000th of an inch, and many exhibit golden mean proportions. Their shape suggests that they are manufactured, and not naturally occurring metal fragments. In fact, they have been found to closely resemble the same miniature components of contemporary nanotechnology. A magnified image of one of the nano coils found in the Ural Mountains. Photo credit, Mysteries of the World, Herbert Gensmer and Ulrich Hellenbrand. Though some have asserted that these tiny structures are merely debris left behind from test rockets being launched from nearby Plesetsk space station, a report from the Moscow Institute determined that they are far too old to have come from modern manufacturing. In 1996, Dr. E.W. Matvejeeva, from the Central Scientific Research Department of Geology and Exploitation of Precious Metals in Moscow, writes that, despite being thousands of years old, the components are of a technological origin. The pieces were found at a depth between 10 and 40 feet, in a geological stratus between 20,000 and 318,000 years old. How were humans able to manufacture such tiny components in the distant past, and what were they used for? Some believe that the coils prove the human race enjoyed a sophisticated level of technology in the Pleistocene era, while others assert that the findings are the work of extraterrestrials. The artifacts have been studied at 4 different facilities in Helsinki, St. Petersburg, and Moscow. However, further research into these tiny structures seems to have ended in 1999, with the death of Dr. Johannes Fiebag, a principal researcher of the find. The article Russia's Ancient Nanostructures was originally published on the Epoch Times, and has been republished with permission. Featured image, the nanospirals found in the...
So yeah, not too sure what to make of that one. Could it be done by nature? And it looks like it's manufactured. We've lost Robert, have we? So we probably have to wrap up now anyway. I don't know if anyone wants to find out any more information on that one. We could look more into it. What happened to Robert though? Unusual. Maybe he got company. Oh, he's back again. What happened there?
Yeah, I got cut off there.
You got cut off?
I don't know what happened.
So it's always the men in black. Yeah, the men in black are always out to get you when you come on Sundays. I've done live streams all week and no men in black. Well, once it dropped a connection when I was mucking around on my emulator, but that could have been some sort of graphic glitch that caused the capture screen to kill the stream software. But anyway, yeah, this is a very strange one. So anyone else wants to find out more information on that one to see if anyone's come up with any solution. Could have man have made it 300,000 years ago? They know that man was around 200,000 years ago. Alien technology? What would the coils be used for though, you know? I don't know if we've got any decent pictures of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's. I'm not really heavily into the ancient alien thing myself, but there seems to be some evidence out there that suggests there was an ancient civilization that had technology that we still don't even have to this day.
So the screw one we can say is a fossil, but the cool ones we can't write off at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
What's that one there?
I mean, the knowledge of astrology and astrology and astronomy seems to be way ahead of the time. And another thing is like the pyramids geometry as well. Now, I'm not saying the pyramids were built by aliens with stone hammers, but the knowledge of mathematics was way ahead of its time. It makes you wonder where they gleaned that knowledge from. It really does. And it certainly at some stage it was lost. You know, and that's unusual because normally a civilization, you know, progresses in step by step. It doesn't go 10 steps forwards and then 8 back, which is what seems to have happened with humanity. I don't really get that.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be too much about this mystery cool. That it was on Ancient Aliens, but I'm not sure. I think the screw one would have been there too. But they wouldn't have mentioned that one being a fossil, but this one is unusual. I must admit.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't look like it could be a fossil. What's that one there? Spirals? Well, spirals is natural though. Oh, don't tell me it's a History Channel YouTube one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can find any more information out on that one.
You know, the thing is, if you want nonsense, then History Channel's not a bad place to go for nonsense.
Yeah. Well, considering it was only found only certain deepness, could have been from the exploding Russian thing, and it spread bolts everywhere. Well, coils everywhere in the atmosphere, and they just come down. I think 50 tons of debris falls onto the Earth every year. I think it was space debris. I think I've covered it before. So could these be like falling from the sky and then just get buried over time? It may be the case. Maybe it's Mars technology. Yeah, I won't do research on it. We better start wrapping up, I think. We could keep on going on this stuff, you know. But we need to update a description anyway on that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we sort of got there in the end. It went all right, smooth. And everybody's saying good night now. And we got a few more joining us, actually. We got up to 9 viewers, 10 viewers all of a sudden. Good night, everybody. Yes, everybody wants to go away. Yeah, good night all. Thanks for watching and joining in. Even if we only got 10 people worldwide that's interested in this stuff and UFOs and mysteries, we will keep on doing the show. Thanks for liking as well and sharing. Got to keep sharing. Sharing is caring. And of course, thanks for the donations, even from our co-host for some reason. I think he was trying to compete with Ken there. But anyway,
yeah, beaten by a penny.
Yeah, he's using iTunes, I think.
Yeah, I understand that. iTunes, yeah, so everything's 0.99.
Yeah. Crazy. His is a more bargain. Bargain price. Hey. Good night, Susan. We'll see you on Discord after show if you want to join Discord and offer stuff that we've missed here or other information that we can look more into. See you on Discord UFO group. Okay, good night.
Okay, good night, people.
It's finally come up. It's all good. Closing down the matrix. Get your comments in now, because we're going to end and they won't be saved. The chat seems to keep on going after we end anyway, doesn't it? Yeah. Kind of strange. Good night. End.